Hello friends, in this video you will see a manhwa called Undercover, Chaebol High School, Part 1 to 3. Please put a like and subscribe if you like this video. This is going to help us a lot. Thank you. In the description below the video you'll find time codes that you can use to quickly switch between parts. Let's get started. The boss is dead. Chairman Lee, who runs Se-young Group, which is also Korea's largest criminal organization, began to get rid of his own comrades, causing the corporation to collapse. That day, she lost everything. 1 year later, a guy bursts into the room of a girl named Lee Da-kyung and asks her if she's still not getting better. Not hearing anything in response, the guy walks closer to the couch where Da-kyung is lying wrapped in a plaid. He said that the girl should get up anyway, because he had found something interesting for her. The girl said she didn't care about that, and told the guy to disappear from her room. The guy said he had some news about the chairman, and the girl was immediately interested in it. She snapped out of her makeshift cocoon and snatched the paper out of the guy's hands. It was a picture of the school. The girl didn't understand anything and asked her friend what it could mean. The guy said that it wasn't exactly an ordinary school. Only the children of Korea's wealthiest Chaebol. A Chaebol is a large industrial conglomerate run and controlled by a person or family in South Korea. Study there. Roughly speaking, it was a high school for the majors. The guy said that the chairman's son just happens to attend this school, to which the girl was surprised that he even had a son. The guy said that although the chairman always said that there were no direct legal heirs to his place, but in fact, things were different, and the child was just carefully hidden from everyone. The guy continued to reason and said that defeating Chairman Lee by fighting him in the open would be simply impossible, especially for them. Plus, with the infiltration of the campaign, they had already screwed up enough. The girl realized what the guy was getting at and asked if they would really need to infiltrate the school. The guy said that the old man was old and would be retiring soon, so if his son took his place as chairman, he was the one to target. Chairman Lee had taken everything away from them. Now it was their turn. When sending Lee Da-kyung on the mission, her friend said that the only thing they knew about Chairman Lee's heir was that it was a boy. That's all the information available to them, so the girl needs to keep a low profile. She needs to find out everything she can about anyone who is even the slightest bit suspicious and inform the guy. That would be her assignment right now. The girl thought that it's all easy in words, but how will she find the right one here? Because there are a lot of guys here. While the girl was walking and dangling in her thoughts, she didn't notice how she hit some girl's shoulder. Her friend came up to her and asked Ji-young if she was okay and if she was hurt. The girl didn't answer her friend's question and only asked who the girl was. In the classroom, the teacher called the students to silence and told the whole class that there was a new student, and her name was Lee Da-kyung. The teacher advised the other students to make friends with Da-kyung, but the girl herself didn't seem to be thinking about that at the moment. After looking around at her new classmates, she thought that there was nothing unusual and walked over to the empty seat. The teacher had said that there would be no morning assembly today, so the students could just sit quietly until class started. Ji-young, who had been pushed by Da-kyung a few minutes ago, grinned as she looked at the girl and made a note to herself that she was new. Lee Da-kyung, as soon as she sat down, started texting her partner. He texted and asked how the girl got to school and if she noticed anything suspicious. The girl replied briefly that she hadn't found anything. Then the guy wrote that the most important thing in her assignment was to be vigilant and not to show the correspondence to anyone. At that moment, Ji-young walked up to Da-kyung's desk and kicked the unfortunate piece of furniture with her foot. Da-kyung managed to hide her phone in time and hold the desk in place with one hand. The girl asked what her classmate needed from her, and Ji-young was even a little scared because the girl's reaction was strange and too calm. But in time to pull herself together and not lose the angry look on her face, Ji-young said that Da-kyung was a real jerk and asked if the girl was taught to apologize when crashing into someone. Da-kyung asked what the hell Ji-young was talking about, But Ji-young let her classmates' words pass her ears and asked her friend Kim Soo-jung if her father had said anything about which entrepreneur's daughter was transferring to them. Soo-jung said that she hadn't heard about it, and since neither she nor Ji-young knew about it, it only meant that Lee Da-kyung was a 4th-ranked student and was very lucky to get into an elite school. Da-kyung looked at her classmate and wondered what kind of rank system nonsense she was talking about. Meanwhile, Ji-young explained that their school had a 4-rank system. The school has a hierarchy based on the position of the family. Families close to the president, members of parliament and conglomerates, and other high-ranking people are the highest rank, which is the 1st rank. The 2nd rank includes entrepreneurs, celebrities, and the simply rich. Those who know the higher-ups through social gatherings outside of school are in the 3rd rank. The rest are unknown people like Lee Da-kyung, who are in the 4th rank. After Ji-young explained the ranking system, she said that Da-kyung, who doesn't even reach the 4th rank, has no right to talk to Ji-young, who is a 2nd ranker. Approaching the new girl's face, Ji-young said that if she didn't want to die, then she better not arise. Satisfied with herself, the girl turned around and walked away, while her friend giggled at the fact that Ji-young had scared the new girl so much that she wouldn't even do anything. But Da-kyung didn't care about those girls. On the contrary, she thought the ranking information that Ji-young had told Ji-young was very useful for her assignment, because since the 1st-ranked students were the children of very powerful people, she should only check all the 1st and 2nd ranked students. The bell that signaled lunchtime finally rang. In the cafeteria, Da-kyung was pleasantly surprised because this school gave steaks to the students for lunch. Sitting at lunch, the girl thought that working under such conditions was wonderful. As soon as she wanted to start her lunch, a message came on her phone. She immediately grabbed her phone and there was a message from her coworker. He was a bit indignant that he asked her to report every hour and the girl didn't. The girl replied that even a dog doesn't get touched when it eats and asked if she was worse than a dog. The guy texted her to not show her temper at school. Just when she thought about how pissed off her partner was and decided to finally take up her food, Ji-young walked up to her. The girl purposely twisted her food tray right into Da-kyung's food and pretended not to notice her. Da-kyung was literally infuriated by this. She didn't understand what they all wanted from her. She was already thinking of nailing that girl somewhere. Looking at her tray, she realized that thanks to her classmates' nastiness, she now had 2 steaks and thought that maybe Ji-young wasn't such a bitch after all. Suddenly, Ji-young's girlfriend intervened and tried to take the steak from Da-kyung's tray and said that if her friend didn't want to eat, she could just give her portion to her. This act made Da-kyung very angry, and she clutched at the girl's arm and told her in a threatening voice to put the meat back. Ji-young looked at this and took the fork away from her friend and threw it away along with the steaks. She said she didn't give up that steak for nothing and wanted to say that she warned Da-kyung to keep her head down. But Da-kyung was so furious at the girl's behavior that she forgot about her partner's request to keep her temper and be as quiet as possible. She stood up abruptly and grabbed Ji-young by her shirt and slammed her into the table. Grabbing a fork, she swung around and wanted to stab the girl in the eye with the cutlery, but stopped in time. This show was seen by all the students gathered in the cafeteria, and they started to discuss it. Some of them suggested to stop the girl, and some of them couldn't understand what kind of girl she was. A little overcome with his aggression, Da-kyung puts down his fork and, stepping away from Ji-young, walks out of the dining hall. Ji-young, completely shocked, slides off the table and seems to be completely unaware of what's going on right now. Her friends immediately run up to her and ask her what happened and how Ji-young is feeling, but the girl couldn't say anything and even wet herself because of the stress. As she left the dining room, Da-kyung thought that she should have gotten rid of her habit of getting excited at the sight of food. Suddenly, some guy appears in front of her and smiles, claps her and tells her that it was cool to watch her take down Jung. The girl couldn't understand what the guy wanted, but the guy immediately said he wanted to be friends with her and asked for her name. The girl thought about whether to tell him her name or not, but she remembered that her partner had asked her to find out as much as she could about anyone who was suspicious and tell him. Then the girl still said her name was Lee Tae-young, and she transferred today. The guy said his name was Han Jong-un, and after digging into his phone for a bit, he handed the smartphone to the girl, asking for his number. At that moment, students started to come out of the dining hall, and when they noticed this, they started to whisper that since Han Jung-woon was taking the new girl's number, she was obviously a high-ranking girl, especially since what she did to Jung was unthinkable for someone of lower rank. After giving the guy her number, Da Kyung thought that it was certainly great that a potential target had come to her on her own, except she didn't understand why everyone was staring at them abruptly. That could have been a problem. The girl handed the phone to Jong-un and was about to leave, but the guy cleverly got in her way and asked where she was going. He said that if she was going to the cafeteria, he would like to walk there together since he thought Da Kyung hadn't eaten. The girl said she shouldn't do that and wanted to go in another direction, but the annoying guy blocked her path again and asked why she didn't want to go with him. Because there was nothing to do and Da Kyung was obviously hungry. The girl still refused and wanted to go in the other direction, but again the guy blocked her way. He did so several times, offering to take a walk together because he knows a beautiful place with a good view, and then offered to show her the school because Dae Kyung had just transferred. The girl felt uncomfortable and decided to run away from him, hoping that he wouldn't follow her. Having closed in the toilet stall, the girl decided to call her partner. He immediately started joking that she was only on her first day of school, but had already managed to find a suitor and asked his name. The girl was in no mood to joke and said that guy's name was Han Jong-un and asked her partner to see if there was any information about him. The guy tried to run Jong-un's name, but it turned out that it wouldn't be that easy since access to personal data was blocked. The guy said that this would probably be the case for every student at this school. The girl said that, in that case, the partner just needed to put more effort into it. After all, he is a hacker after all. The guy replied that he was a hacker, of course, but not a wizard. There's a multi-layered defense system here, so he's powerless, so they need to change the plan. Now Dae Kyung needs to get close to him and find out more. The girl sighed and asked what it would take to befriend the guy. Her partner was surprised at such a question and called her a dummy, but said to listen carefully. He said that, as a man with a lot of experience in lovemaking, he would give her a couple ways. First, the girl should impose herself as naturally as possible to go home with him. She can chat about all sorts of nonsense at the same time and he can tell her something. Then you can offer to eat together tteokbokki, which students love so much. Then you can have a snack at some cozy cafe and take pictures for social media. Finish on this will be sad, so you can also go to karaoke. And in the evening, the girl can walk next to him in the setting sun and hint that she does not want to go home, offering to eat ramen. The girl skeptically asked if this could work, to which he received the answer that the option is a win-win. She'll also need to make friends with some of the girls because if she gets close to them, she'll learn information about the other students. But most importantly, she would have to remember about the ramen. The girl dropped the call and thought it was already a waste to ask her partner what to do. Coming out of the restroom, Da Kyung looked around and hoped that Jong-un had already given up. The girl suddenly thought about the fact that Lee's surname was quite common. Then why was it necessary to hide the heir's name? Realizing that she didn't want to waste her time on this, the girl wanted to leave, but suddenly she heard Ji-young's voice yelling at someone and demanding to give something back. She argued with the guys, one of whom asked who the hell she was to demand to give his phone back. Then the girl demanded to delete those pictures and said that he had no right to take pictures of other people's missteps. Da Kyung decided to find out what was going on and remembered her partner's words about her needing to make friends with some of the girls, but she was so reluctant to do so. The guy said that even if Ji-young tried to do something, it's unlikely that she would succeed. She can act all she wants, but that kind of thing won't pass in front of Jae Ha-yoon. He said that his parents work for Ji Hyun's father, and he's not likely to just let that spit in his direction. He said that he really enjoys seeing how stuck-up Hwang Ji-young can't even say a word. If that's the case, he'll put the photo on Facebook too. The girl told him not to dare to do that, but suddenly, Lee Dae-kyung appeared and pulled the guy's hand down with a sudden movement. She asked Ji-young what happened, and she said that the guy had pictures of her peeing and wanted to put them online. The guy was furious that the girls were ignoring him and asked if they thought he wasn't capable of hitting a girl. Then Da Kyung just took his phone away from him and gave the item to Ji-young, telling her to delete everything and remember to clean the cloud. This finally pissed the guy off and he swung around to hit Da Kyung. But the girl easily dodged and knocked him out with a sharp move. After calmly asking Ji-young if she was done, Da Kyung took her phone from her and placed it next to the guy, took her hand and led her away from that place. The other guy who was watching this scene immediately started waking up the main person in their company, Ji Hyun. After taking off his night blindfold to sleep, Ji Hyun asked what happened. Then the other guy said that Oh Won-jun got a good beating from a girl and now he's lying unconscious. Ji Hyun asked the girl's name, and the guy pointed to where they were going and said that the girl's name was Lee Da Kyung, and she was new. The girl sat on the stairs and Da Kyung happily ate the goodies that Ji Yeon bought her in gratitude. Da Kyung told her classmate to eat too, but she said she didn't want to because she was on a diet. Looking at a satisfied Da Kyung eating her food, Ji-young wondered who she was and what kind of family she was from. She does whatever she wants, throwing herself into fights. This was actually the first time she heard the name Lee Da-kyung. Ji-young couldn't understand who the girl's parents were, that she lets herself do such a thing. The girl's thoughts were interrupted by Da-kyung, who out of nowhere decided to apologize for crashing into Jung back at the beginning of the day. She said that she was just daydreaming and didn't notice the girl. Ji-young was a little confused and told Da Kyung not to hold a grudge against her for all the antics either, because she was a little over the top. Da Kyung looked at how embarrassed her classmate was and thought that she was just embarrassed to apologize to someone. Suddenly, she decided to ask Ji-young a question and asked if she knew Han Jung-woon. The girl said she knew the guy and asked why Da Kyung was asking that. Da Kyung said she was just curious, but Ji-yeon thought she had a crush on the guy. Da Kyung got a little angry about it, and then the girl apologized just in case, not wanting to be a victim of violence. She said that Han Jong-un is always friendly and smiles at everyone, but sometimes it seems like there's something wrong with him and he's a little intimidating. Da Kyung asked why he's the one who's scary, and then the classmate said that it all happened on the first day after enrollment. At that time, a crowd of high school students came to see the first incoming students. Jung asked if Da Kyung knew the foreign minister, Woo Guang-shik. His son was of the highest rank and older than them, and as luck would have it, Jung-woon ran into him specifically. Nothing was known about the newcomer, so he was immediately assigned to the lower ranks. The minister's son was hurt that someone of the fourth rank dared to talk to him like that. From that day on, Jung-woon's school life became unbearable. It even got violent. Every day, the minister's son harassed Jong-un for no reason, but despite this, Jong-un tolerated it all with a smile on his face. It seemed like he just didn't have a choice, but one day in art class, the elder poured a whole bucket of dirty water on him. That day, the normally smiling guy was very different, looking rather strange. A silence hung in the classroom, and everyone thought that something scary was about to happen. However, he once again just turned a blind eye to everything. The next day, the high school student suddenly disappeared. Da Kyung asked in surprise if he really disappeared. Jung said he disappeared without a trace, and they never heard from him again. Jung said it was strange because the guy was the son of the foreign minister. Because of that incident, everyone thought that Han Jung-woon was being covered up by a powerful person. Lee Da Kyung thought about it and decided that there was a possibility that Jung-woon was the one she was looking for. Ji-young chuckled and said that after that incident, a lot of people started to wonder if Jung-un killed that guy. Suddenly, the object of the girls' discussion was sitting next to them. The guy said that they have an amazing imagination. The stunned Ji-young covered her mouth with her hands, while Da Kyung was just surprised. The girl took Jong-un's hand and took him aside. She wondered what was wrong with this guy and didn't realize if he had heard everything. Da Kyung took the guy outside and put him against the wall and asked him why he was chasing her tail. The guy said with a carefree smile that he just had an awakened interest. Da Kyung didn't understand why he was so calm. she wondered if she should take her partner's advice. Suddenly, Da Kyung asked if Han Jung-woon really liked her, to which the guy replied positively. The girl thought he was kidding, but if it was true, it would be even easier for her. She gathered her courage and decided to invite the guy to eat ramen together. The guy was surprised by this and asked again if it was at his house. The girl said he was, to which the guy laughed. He said that Da Kyung was funny, and since she wanted to, they could meet after school and he would make her ramen. The girl was a little surprised that this method actually worked. Once classes were over, Jong-un was waiting for Lee Da-kyung right outside the door to her classroom. As they walked out of the school, all the students looked at them strangely. Jong-un asked why the sudden change in attitude. She is now offering him to eat ramen together, while she was avoiding him at first. The girl said she pondered and decided that she wouldn't mind befriending him. She asked if his parents would be okay with Jung-woon having a friend over, and if it was okay to just show up at his place. The guy said Da Kyung shouldn't worry about it because he lives alone. The guy asked if everything was okay because Da Kyung was going to the house of a guy she was practically seeing for the first time. The girl asked what the problem was. Jung-woon said that it could be a dangerous venture, right? Da Kyung asked who it could be a dangerous venture for, to which the guy told her to just forget it. When they got to Jong-un's house, the girl noticed that the apartment was a little empty, and there was nothing interesting to see. She was already starting to doubt if she could find out anything. Jong-un offered the girl something to drink. He said he had coffee, water, and aloe juice. The girl said she wanted the aloe juice. The guy poured her juice and said the girl could look around while he made quick work of it. The girl waited until he went into the other room and discreetly inserted the flash drive into the computer on the table and waited for the data to load. While she waited, she wondered if Jong-un was even human or not. Everything in the apartment literally glistened with cleanliness. Surprisingly, the guy's house is pretty modest, especially considering the rumors. Suddenly, the girl noticed a photo album on one of the shelves and looked at the pictures of little Jong-un. The girl noticed that the guy hasn't changed at all, except that he has the same indifferent look in all the photos. But that was nothing compared to the fact that there were no pictures of his family anywhere in the album. Suddenly, Da Kyung called out to the guy, and she immediately put the album back down, asking what the guy wanted. All he wanted to ask was if the girl preferred ramen with or without egg. The girl said it would even be 2, and asked if she could have more juice. The guy said the juice was in the fridge and asked to serve it. As soon as the girl turned around to go to the fridge, she accidentally elbowed the ramen pot and the entire contents spilled out onto Jung-woon. The girl quickly reacted and told him to take off his clothes, to which the guy was surprised but took off his shirt. The girl apologized to Jong-un by throwing ice in the tub where the guy was sitting. Jong-un said it was okay and he wasn't hurt. The girl objected and said that it wasn't nothing because a whole pot of boiling water poured on him. The guy said he was fine and only got a couple drops on him, but the girl told him to shut up. The girl thought she needed to get herself together since she had already made a mess of things on her first day of being at school. Looking over the guy's body, the girl thought he looked skinnier with his clothes on. It looked like exercising wasn't on the top of his list. Comparing that to what she'd learned earlier, he could very well be the one she was looking for. Her musings were interrupted by a guy and said that she was devouring his gaze too greedily and he was embarrassed. The girl blushed and said the guy was talking nonsense. After gathering her courage, she said that in 10 minutes the guy could get out of the tub and change his pants. As soon as the guy got out of the tub, the girl told him to come over and put a bandage on the injured area. She said that everything looks good and the maximum that Jung-woon is in danger of getting is a first-degree burn. However, the affected area isn't small, and it would be better for him to go to the hospital. The girl notices the guy staring at her and asks what the problem is. Jung-woon said he suddenly remembered how Da Kyung finished off Jeong, and now she's also professionally administering first aid. She reminded the guy of a spy from an action movie. The girl thought that the guy was very close to the truth and it was time to stop doing nonsense. She asked the guy to sit down. Da Kyung said that from now on she would ask the questions and the guy should answer clearly and to the point. She asked why and since when the guy was living separately. The guy said he just wanted to live alone. He wanted to ask why the interrogations were even happening, but the girl interrupted him and asked if it was because of a strained relationship with his parents, or maybe there were some other reasons. The guy said they aren't that close. Kyung said that, since it's personal, then we need to go back a little bit and remember what Hwang Jiyoung said. Guy wanted to ask what she meant, but she asked if it was true without even listening. The guy called the girl by name and asked if she was here to give him an interrogation. The girl seemed to wake up and apologized and said she got a little carried away. The guy said it was fine. It was just that this amount of questions was very unexpected. He said he was surprised that the girl was so interested in him. Now he decided to find out more about the girl and asked where she had come to their school from. The girl answered with pre-prepared phrases that she had transferred from an ordinary school on the outskirts of Seoul. The guy asked about the reason for the transfer, to which the girl said it was because of the movie. Jung-woon said that the girl's parents must have been influential enough for her to transfer to their school. The girl thought that she didn't want to bring up the topic of family. Jung-woon said he noticed that she didn't pay attention to her classmates' attempts to show her superiority. He is sure that her loved ones are good people, and he would like to know more about them. Dae-kyung said her parents are simple and warm people. After sitting for a while, she said it was time for her to leave. The guy asked if it was time for her to go, to which the girl said she'd better not stay too long. She thought she had downloaded the data and looked at everything, so that was enough for today. The guy asked if she knew the meaning of the phrase "eat ramen." The girl didn't understand why the guy asked that. Jung-woon said that his intuition was right and he should have said that. When the guy explained the meaning of the phrase, the girl blushed and thought she was going to kill her partner. The guy grinned and asked if the girl could stay a little longer, but she said she'd rather go. Suddenly her phone rang and after apologizing, she went into the bathroom to answer it. The girl answered it and asked what was wrong, because she texted that she was going to Jung-woon's house. But instead of answering, the girl heard her partner screaming. She immediately ran out of the bathtub and told Jung-woon that she had something important to do and quickly ran out of the guy's apartment. As Da-kyung ran to her house, she wondered what was going on with her partner. She thought someone had attacked him, but she couldn't even imagine who, because to the rest of the world they no longer existed. Finally running home, she opened the door and was horrified. The apartment was trashed, and in the middle of the room, a wounded Cho Dae-hoon was sitting on a chair. The girl asked if the guy was alive and rushed to him, but a man swung a bat at her from behind. The girl reacted quickly and blocked the blow with her hand and, trying to see the attacker's face, asked who he was. Without waiting for an answer, the girl hit the unknown man and he fell to the floor, got up very quickly and ran away. The girl wondered how this man could have found her and Dae-hoon, and if it was Chairman Lee's efforts. Cho Dae-hoon woke up already in the hospital. The first person he saw in front of him was Dae-kyung. The first thing he asked the girl was what had happened to her arm, as she had a big bruise after being hit with the bat. The girl ignored the question and said that the guy didn't need to move since the stitches had just been done recently. Da-kyung asked what really happened to the guy and how he managed to lose to one person. Dae-hoon said he didn't know how it happened. His last memory was of the stranger going through his computer, apparently collecting the data they had, but it wasn't clear to the guy why they would leave him alive in such a case. It also wasn't clear why he was working alone. The girl said that there was no need to think about it now. Without the right information, it was useless to fill one's head with theories. Da-kyung said that they needed to look for a place for a new base and get rid of all evidence related to them. At that moment, she tossed the guy a flash drive that had all the information from Jung-woon's computer on it. She said that the guy would need to study them. Dae-hoon immediately perked up and asked how that boy was doing and if they had a good time. The girl didn't like that and hit the guy. Taking him by the collar, she said that he should have warned him about what those words meant if he wasn't in a hurry to go to the other world. This picture was seen by a nurse who came to the ward and kicked the girl out of the room. The girl decided to go out on the roof of the building to think about her own thoughts for a while. Suddenly, she remembered her former boss. She remembered how the woman had advised her not to worry so much because Da-kyung was doing well as it was. Da-kyung thought that if the boss were alive right now, she would probably say something like that. Da-kyung stood next to a guy who was smoking a cigarette without even noticing him. Thinking it was time for her to go back and clean up the office, she turned around and wanted to leave when suddenly the guy called her name. The girl turned around and looked around for the guy. Not remembering him, she asked if they knew each other. The guy looked at her and said that means she was the one who beat up June. The girl didn't realize who she was talking about until the guy came out on the roof. When he noticed Da-kyung, he got angry and rushed towards her and swung to hit her. But his fist was intercepted by the guy with the cigarette. June said that the girl was just lucky that Jae-han was here, and if she catches June's eye one more time, she's finished. June quickly returned to the hospital building. Da-kyung asked why Jae-kyung needed to stop June. The guy replied that he was sick of seeing how some people think they're above others just because of their parents' status. As for Dae-kyung, she shouldn't be conceited because she can fight. He advised the girl to keep her head down and sit quietly for a while, happy that everything had turned out okay this time. The girl abruptly turned to the guy and took the cigarette from him and threw it away. She thanked the guy for the advice and asked him to remind her what his name was. The guy was amazed at how the girl was able to steal his cigarette without him even noticing it. He said his name was Lee Jae-hyun. The girl thought that, because of Lee's last name, he might also be the one she and Tae-hoon were looking for. Turning around to leave, the girl said that the guy would smoke when he got older, since he was still in high school. When the door behind Da-kyung slammed shut, the guy thought it just sounded like a lecture from an adult. The next day at school, Da-kyung was just sleeping on her desk after such an eventful night. Suddenly, someone called out to the girl. Reluctantly rising from her makeshift sleeping place, the girl asked who was bothering her and saw Jung-woon in front of her. He was smiling and asked if the girl had gotten home okay yesterday. The girl didn't understand what the guy was asking. Then he asked if Dae-kyung hadn't read his messages. The girl didn't even remember if the guy had texted her. When she wanted to pull out her phone to check that, Jong-un grabbed her hand and pulled on it a little. The girl yelped and asked what he was doing and what he wanted from her. Rolling up the sleeve of his shirt, the guy's gaze revealed a huge bruise on the girl's forearm, sealed with a band-aid. Looking at the bruise, he asked who dared to do that. The girl didn't understand what the guy wanted, and then he asked who dared to do that to Da-kyung. Lee Da-kyung and Han Jong-woon were sitting at the nurse's station. The guy asked Dae-kyung if she really wanted to say that she accidentally fell and hit herself. The girl said that's exactly what happened, and she sat there wondering why she was even sitting there and making excuses to this guy. Han Jong-woon said that the girl didn't know how to lie at all. She got indignant and asked why she would do that. The girl said that everything is fine and she shouldn't be so worried. She wanted to get up and leave, but Jong-woon blocked her way and asked where she was going. The girl said that she had a class and she didn't want to be late, to which Jong-woon said that she had slept through the last class peacefully. The girl was getting angry and thought that Jong-woon's behavior reminded her of a caring father. Suddenly Da-kyung's phone rang, but she didn't remember leaving her cell phone on the table. Jong-woon went to pick up the phone, but the girl realized that she couldn't let him see who was calling or, God forbid, answer the call. The guy was about to grab the phone and tell Dae-kyung that some Cho Dae-hoon was calling her, but the girl came up to him and told him not to touch the phone. Jong-un grabbed the phone and decided not to give it to the landlady. The girl was taken aback by such insolence and asked him to give the phone back. The guy asked why Da-kyung was so nervous all of a sudden. He also asked if the call was from the criminal who hurt Dae-kyung's hand. Da-kyung asked angrily why the guy thought she should be involved with such a person. Jung-woon said that until he hears an honest answer from the girl, she won't get her phone back. Then Dae-kyung said that it was one of her bodyguards calling, which the guy didn't believe either. He said he asked her to answer honestly. Dae-kyung was already completely pissed off by the guy's behavior, so she decided to try to get the phone herself. As soon as she grabbed her things, she immediately got excited, but suddenly she accidentally stumbled and fell to the floor with Jong-un. At that moment, the door of the nurse's station opens and Lee Jae-hyun enters the room. Seeing this picture, he didn't seem to be too surprised, but he decided to ask if it was Lee Dae-kyung. Jung-woon asked if the two knew each other, to which the girl got her cell phone back and said that they met yesterday. Jae-hyun said he's not in the habit of touching other people's stuff, but this is really starting to get on his nerves. Jung-woon asks why he's suddenly getting nervous, to which Jae-han replies that he's been acting really mean to girls and now he's flirting with a new girl who doesn't know anything. Jung-woon asked if Jae-han was jealous. The guy replied that Jung-woon is talking nonsense. Jung-woon asked since when did Jae-hyun stick his nose in other people's business. Dae-kyung took advantage of the guy's altercation and slipped out into the hallway. She thought that after the two of them, she had no energy left and would need to eat. Meanwhile in class, Hwang Ji-young approached one of her friends, Kim Soo-jung, and offered to go to the restroom with her. The girl was a little confused and said that her teacher asked her to go in, so she couldn't go with her. After Soo-chong refused, Ji-young sat down with another friend and offered to go shopping with her after class, but she said she had plans of her own. When class was over, Ji-young walked out of the classroom and ran into her friends. She asked why the girls were standing there instead of going to lunch and offered to go together. One of the girls said she was on a diet, and the other girl abruptly bent in half and said her stomach twisted badly. Ji-young started to suspect something, but still went to the cafeteria alone. As the girl walked, all the students looked at her askew and even giggled at her. Clutching her head, Ji-young couldn't believe that she was now an outsider in the school and thought that yesterday's commotion was to blame. But at the same time, she thought that all these students should be grateful to her for being friends with them, despite the fact that they all belonged to the third rank. Ji-young had already pulled out her phone and wanted to call and complain to her father, but she remembered their conversation in the morning. In the morning, Ji-young's father had told her that things weren't going well in his company right now. Because of that, he asked his daughter to reduce her spending at boutiques to at least 30 million won for a while. At that time, the girl thought how bad the company was doing that her father had to limit her out-of-pocket expenses. Thinking back to that conversation, Hwang Ji-young wondered if the students might have gotten wind of the trouble at her father's firm. Standing in front of the dining room, the girl thought that there was no way she could eat alone. Suddenly, she saw Lee Da-kyung, who was eating alone. Ji-young thought that this girl beat up Oh-won Jun yesterday, and today she's sitting quietly eating lunch like nothing happened. Based on that, Ji-young thought that Dae-kyung was definitely not below the second rank. Without thinking long, Ji-young took the tray of food and sat down next to Lee Da-kyung. Dae-kyung was surprised at this turn of events and asked what Ji-young needed and where her friends were. Ji-young irritably said that she didn't even want to know them anymore. The girl said that her father's company is in trouble right now and yesterday's incident has added fuel to the fire and now Ji-young is being shunned by everyone. The girl said that since Dae-kyung was the reason for the incident, she should take care of Ji-young now. When Dae-kyung refused, the girl started crying and to somehow stop it, Dae-kyung had to agree after all. While eating her food, Ji-young complained and said how can she call those girls her friends after what happened, and how can she do such a thing? Dae-kyung looked at her classmate and thought how can she cry and eat at the same time? Suddenly, Ji-young suggested that the girl go shopping together after school. Dae-kyung thought that if she said no, Ji-young would start crying again, but she decided to give it a try and said that she already had plans for the evening. Ji-young asked how Da-kyung could do that when she agreed to take on the responsibility. Dae-kyung was already thinking about hitting the annoying girl. Suddenly, Ji-young said that it's already decided and she and Dae-kyung are going out after school. Ji-young wants to post new pictures on Instagram and prove to her friends that she's doing well without them, so Dae-kyung has to find time to go out. After thinking for a while, Dae-kyung decides that it's for the best since she can ask Ji Ya-yeon about Lee Jae-hoon and Han Jong-woon while she's out. Dae-kyung agreed to go with Ji-young, which Ji-young was very happy about. After school, Ji-young's driver took the girl to a huge shopping mall. Da-kyung looked at the building from top to bottom and a bad feeling settled in her soul. Ji-young had tried on a lot of clothes in the fashion boutique and always asked Dae-kyung for her opinion on the clothes. A tired Da-kyung said that all the outfits were great, but she didn't think that 3 hours of shopping was too much. Ji-young asked if her classmate was already tired, and she seemed so strong. Suddenly, Ji-young looked at her friend and immediately sent her to the fitting room. When Dae-kyung came out of the fitting room, Ji-young gasped at how chic the girl looked in that outfit. Standing on her heels, an already tired Dae-kyung suggested going home already. Ji-young told the female salesperson that the girls would go straight in this outfit. She just smiled and said it would be 9,765,000 won and asked if it would be cash or card. Dae-kyung was shocked and wanted to stop Ji-young from paying, but she had already paid. She said it would be a memorable gift for her friend, modest, but she hoped Da-kyung would like it. Dae-kyung looked at the girl and wondered if she really thought it was a modest gift. After shopping, the girls went out for dinner. During dinner, Ji-young stared intently at her friend sitting across from her, causing Dae-kyung to wonder if she had something on her face. With a sly smirk, Ji-young asked the girl to honestly answer if she was a rank 1 representative. Dae-kyung asked what made the girl think that. Ji-young asked if she was still mad about yesterday's incident. The girl had apologized after all. Ji-young explained that Won-jun wouldn't let something like that go unnoticed, which meant that the girl had somehow managed to fix it. Dae-kyung couldn't figure out which person they were talking about at first, but Ji-young said that guy was the heir to the Won-jun holding company. Dae-kyung asked if it was such a famous company. Ji-young was surprised that her friend didn't know such a thing, but she still explained the situation. Won-jun is a relatively young corporation without a long history. It's only 20 years old. However, in recent years it has been gaining more and more influence in its niche. After analyzing this information, Dae-kyung decided that Won-jun could be ruled out as a suspect. Ji-young was surprised that Lee Da-kyung didn't know anything about the others and there was no information about her herself. She then speculated that Dae-kyung's family is in the upper class and it could very well even be some foreign corporation. Dae-kyung said that the girl just made a big deal out of it, and that Lee Jae-hyun just helped her with Won-jun. Ji-yeon asked if that's really true. Lee Jae-hyun is a guy about whom nothing is known, yet he is bypassed by even the most powerful. Ji-young waited for more details and Dae-kyung thought it was worth watching Jae-hyun. Suddenly, Ji-young asked if her friend Lee liked Jae-hyun. Without waiting for an answer, she said that Dae-kyung had it written all over her face and would definitely set them up. Lee Da-kyung told her not to mess around and literally dragged her out of the restaurant. The girls left the mall in the evening as it was getting dark. Ji-young kept chattering about how everything she said today would remain a secret, and Dae-kyung realized that no matter how hard she tried, Ji-young would still hear what she wanted to hear. Ji-young walked to the car where the driver was already waiting for her and asked if Dae-kyung wanted a ride to her house. The girl said no, and Ji-young gave the girl her bag of clothes and said she would go first. However, she said Dae-kyung was obligated to call her when she got home. As soon as Ji-young left, Dae-kyung sat on a bench at the nearest bus stop and took off one shoe. She was very tired, but she thought that at least she hadn't suffered for nothing. Based on the information she had gathered, Won-jun could be ruled out, but the unknown Lee Jae-hyun was worth knowing more about. However, due to her fatigue, she decided that she had enough for today. Looking at her bloody feet, she thought about how to get to the office. Suddenly, a box of band-aids appeared in front of her. Looking up, she saw Lee Jae-hyun in front of her. The guy said he happened to notice the girl. Lee Jae-hyun handed Dae-kyung the band-aids and said that he happened to notice the girl. Da-kyung took the band-aids and taped up her injured legs. The girl thought that it turns out Lee Jae-hyun isn't so stale. As soon as she wanted to give the guy the band-aids and thank him for his help, Jae-hyun wasn't there. The girl caught up to the guy and still tried to give him the band-aids and told him that she would owe him. Jae-hyun told her that she could keep the band-aids since he didn't need them. The girl said she wouldn't do that and asked him to stop. The girl stood in front of Jae-hyun and said that she was very grateful. She asked if the guy would let her buy him coffee as a thank you. Dae-kyung tried to make it cute to get Jae-hyun to be as comfortable with her as Han Jong-woon was. She thought that it only went away because Jong-yoon was with his cockroaches, but it wouldn't go away with normal people. After a couple seconds of silence, Jae-hyun still agreed and said he wanted to check something out. He asked if Dae-kyung wanted to go to the coffee shop, right? The girl agreed, and then the guy told the girl to follow him. Da-kyung was a little surprised, but at the same time she felt good that she had succeeded at something. At the cafe, the girl was brought her dessert and coffee. When she saw the dessert, she thought what kind of fool came up with the idea of stuffing a croissant into a waffle. But it was delicious. She remembered why she'd come here with Jae-hyun in the first place, and decided to get some information. She asked if Jae-hyun came here often. The guy didn't say anything, and Dae-kyung decided to do it the old-fashioned way, but Jae-hyun beat her to it. He bluntly asked who sent the girl. Dae-kyung gave him a surprised look, and the guy continued. He said there's no information about the girl's transfer, and her file is empty. On top of that, she's good at martial arts. He asked if she really thought she was well trained. The girl sat in shock after saying that and wondered what was wrong with this guy. Jae-hyun said she better say everything now or else it will be worse. Dae-kyung thought that it would be logical that she would be exposed sooner or later, but she didn't think it would be so soon. The girl thought about how much more Jae-hyun knew. She had already reached for the knife attached to her hip, but she was able to pull herself together in time. Jae-kyung thought that if the guy knew something, there would be no point in talking like this. It was likely that he was just bluffing. Da Kyung made a surprised face and asked if Jae-hyun thought she was a spy. The girl said that martial arts is just self-defense and a childhood hobby. About the personal information, the girl answered with a question to a question. She asked if Jae-hyun did the same thing. She said that it's not difficult at all for her to confirm her background, but she's not burning to do it. Unlike her boyfriend, Da Kyung just recently transferred to this school and doesn't know anyone yet. It's hard for her to trust people in a situation like this. Now she's sitting there listening to such ridiculous accusations from a person who has been hiding all the information about herself for the second year. Jae-hyun interrupted her and said that they should end the conversation for now. The girl thought that as soon as the conversation started about Jae-hyun, he immediately decided to cut it off. The girl asked why he was digging at her, to which Jae-hyun just remained silent. Then she asked if he had agreed to coffee just for the sake of this conversation. Dae-kyung thought that there was nothing strange about such actions. It was a natural reaction to something unfamiliar. Come to think of it now, Han Jong-un was just too friendly. The girl's musings were interrupted by Jae-hyun, who asked if she was dating Han Jong-woon. The girl said that if he was referring to that morning incident, then let him forget about it. The guy said it was already time for them to leave. Da Kyung was a little upset that she didn't get to find out anything. She got up from the table and twisted her leg a little and would have fallen if Jae-hyun hadn't caught her by the elbow. The guy told her to hold on to him. Walking out of the cafe, Dae-kyung held on to Lee Jae-hyun's hand. The girl thought that she was so nervous that she couldn't give it up. She also thought that she was already pissed off with these shoes and maybe she should fast barefoot. Suddenly, the girl abruptly turned around and started looking out into the street. Jae-hyun asked what was wrong. The girl replied that it was nothing. She asked if the guy didn't have security. Instead of answering, he asked the girl why she herself didn't have security. The girl said she didn't need it. Jae-hyun said he doesn't take security for the same reason. Suddenly, a car pulls up next to them. A man looks out of the open window. Jo Dae-hoon looks out. He asks if Dae-kyung and Lee Jae-hyun are on a date and asks how they went out. Dae-hoon thought he almost went to the other side of the world, and Dae-kyung calls him at the hospital and asks him to pick her up from her boyfriend. Dae-hoon told Ms. Dae-kyung to take a seat in the car, to which the girl asked him to shut up. The girl said goodbye to Jae-hyun and got into the car. As soon as Dae-kyung got into the car, Dae-hoon asked where the girl got those clothes from. The girl, instead of answering, said that it would be better if the guy was looking at the road. Dae-hoon said that Han Jong-woon was a handsome guy, but Dae-kyung corrected him and said it was Lee Jae-hyun. The guy asked who it was, but Dae-kyung said he'd tell it later, but for now he needed to slowly drive forward. Dae-hoon asked why. The girl said someone is watching. The guy asked if Dae-kyung was being watched, to which the girl said she didn't know. Dae-hoon assumed it was Lee Jae-hyun's security, but after all, he doesn't take it. The guy asked what to do in the end since they have to turn left at a stoplight. The girl told him to stop whining and keep going straight. Lee Jae-hyun, who was standing at the same spot, took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and brought one to his mouth. Lee Jae-hyun's men appeared out of nowhere and one of them flicked a lighter, helping the young gentleman to light up. The second man told Jae-hyun that the chairman was telling him to go home. He wanted to say something about yesterday's incident, but the guy prevented him from doing so, asking if he wasn't telling them all to work clean. It was a rainy day. At school, Oh Won-jun's friend came over and said that they needed to talk. The guy got up from the makeshift recliner as other students and walked out to his friend. Won-jun asked what the guy's news was. When they came out, the guy asked Oh Won-jun if it was all for interest or not. Won-jun didn't understand the question. Then his friend already asked directly if Won-jun was overdoing it. This idea could be dangerous because the guys don't know these people they're talking about. Won-jun, without looking away from his phone, told his friend not to bother with something like that, because he had thought of everything himself. And if the friend doesn't like something, he can leave. The guy asked Oh Won-jun to stop and listen to him, but he just kept saying that the friend could leave. Then he couldn't take it anymore and asked Oh Won-jun why he was so worked up lately. He's doing whatever the hell he's doing and doesn't even think about what will happen if Jae-hyun finds out. The guys are having a good time. At his friend's statement, Oh Won-jun only gave an ambiguous snicker and ordered the student standing next to him to take off his glasses. As soon as he did so, Oh Won-jun slapped him hard in the face several times. The guy fell to his knees and Won-jun asked his friend, Kim Yoon-dae, why he was always prying with his opinion. He said that he didn't touch the guy just because they've known each other for a long time. However, that doesn't mean that Kim Yoon-dae should forget his place. Yoon-dae apologized and Won-jun said that if he has nothing else to say, he can fuck off. Suddenly, a voice was heard behind Won-jun's back. When he turned around, he saw Han Jung-woon, who was helping a beaten-up student up. The guy said that it was time for Won-jun to stop beating everyone up. As soon as Jung-woon left for a while, he started beating up again. Jung-woon asked if Won-jun never learned anything from what he got from Dae-kyung. Won-jun was very angry at those words, but he couldn't hit Han Jung-woon for some reason. After cursing under his breath, he went to his classroom. Han Jung-woon walked to Dae-kyung's classroom and was about to open the door when he was called out. It was Lee Jae-hun. He handed him a bag and told him to give it to Lee Dae-kyung. When the guy opened it, he saw Dae-kyung's school uniform and asked where the guy got it from, but there was no answer. In class as usual, Ji-young was annoying the tired Dae-kyung with her chatter. The girl asked her friend to pick something, and when she agreed and wanted to show her her favorite option, a bag of school uniforms came down right in front of Dae-kyung. Han Jong-yoon sat down in front of the girls and asked what was so interesting that they were discussing. He assumed that they were discussing what Dae-kyung was doing yesterday with Lee Jae-hyun. Dae-kyung, looking at her uniform, got excited and thought that she had lost it last night. She asked Han Jung-woon where he got her uniform from. The guy said that Jae-hyun asked him to give it to her. He asked if she and Jae-hyun had met yesterday. The girl said that they met in the evening. The guy then asked if it was just the two of them, to which the girl also answered positively. After those answers, Jong-moon asked what they did yesterday that Dae-kyung was left without clothes. Dae-kyung said that it wasn't what the guy thought and that there was no need to make up nonsense. To that, Jung-eun asked what really happened then. Jae-yeon, watching Dae-kyung and Han Jong-woon's showdown, thought it was straight out of a romantic movie. She thought that after seeing her, Dae-kyung looked at Lee Jae-hyun and yesterday she was acting like an innocent sheep. That fact must have really upset Han Jung-woon. In Ji-young's mind, there was a love triangle in which Han Jong-woon was in love with Dae-kyung, the girl was in love with Lee Jae-hyun, and Han Jong-woon and Lee Jae-hyun were feuding with each other. The girl was ready to melt, but Dae-kyung's face was begging for help, so Ji Yae-yeon showed the guy a photo of her with Dae-kyung and said that they were at the mall last night. Because of this, Dae-kyung just took off her uniform to change into the clothes she bought. The guy picked up his phone and asked if she had any more pictures of Dae-kyung because he wanted to see her in something else. Thinking quickly, Ji-young said that if that was the case, he could come by next week since Dae-kyung had promised to come too. Dae-kyung looked at her classmate in shock, thinking, when did she make such a promise? The guy asked if it was okay. Ji-young said that she doesn't usually invite guys to her house, but one time an exception could be made. Dae-kyung asked if her opinion counted, but Ji-young and Jung-woon continued to discuss their upcoming meeting. In the end, they agreed on Monday without asking Dae-kyung's opinion. As soon as Lee Da-kyung got home after school, she was greeted by Jo Dae-hoon asking if she was already out of class. The girl mumbled something. Dae-hoon asked if it's really great to have school right next door to the house. The girl said that they met in the evening. The guy then asked if it was just the two of them, to which the girl also answered positively. After those answers, Jung-eun asked what they did yesterday that Dae-kyung was left without clothes. Dae-kyung said that it wasn't what the guy thought and that there was no need to make up nonsense. To that, Jung-eun asked what really happened then. Ji-yeon, watching Dae-kyung and Han Jong-woon's showdown, thought it was straight out of a romantic movie. She thought that after seeing her, Dae-kyung looked at Lee Jae-hyun and yesterday she was acting like an innocent sheep. That fact must have really upset Han Jung-woon. In Ji-young's mind, there was a love triangle in which Han Jong-woon was in love with Dae-kyung. The girl was in love with Lee Jae-hyun and Han Jong-woon and Lee Jae-hyun were feuding with each other. The girl was ready to melt, but Dae-kyung's face was begging for help, so Ji-yeon showed the guy a photo of her with Dae-kyung and said that they were at the mall last night. Because of this, Dae-kyung just took off her uniform to change into the clothes she bought. The guy picked up his phone and asked if she had any more pictures of Dae-kyung because he wanted to see her in something else. Thinking quickly, Ji-young said that if that was the case, he could come by next week since Dae-kyung had promised to come too. Dae-kyung looked at her classmate in shock, thinking, when did she make such a promise? The guy asked if it was okay. Ji-young said that she doesn't usually invite guys to her house, but one time an exception could be made. Dae-kyung asked if her opinion counted, but Ji-young and Jung-woon continued to discuss their upcoming meeting. In the end, they agreed on Monday without asking Dae-kyung's opinion. As soon as Lee Da-kyung got home after school, she was greeted by Jo Dae-hoon asking if she was already out of class. The girl mumbled something. Dae-hoon asked if it's really great to have school right next door to the house. The girl said it was perfect, except for the lack of air conditioning and the building's deterioration. The guy said there's nothing you can do here. Considering the distance, price and safety, you couldn't find a better place. Suddenly, the guy asked why Dae-kyung looked so tired. She said she would love to see the guy if he would try to walk to school by himself. She also asked if Jo Dae-hoon had checked Han Jung-woon's computer data flash drive. The guy said that he was just waiting for Dae-kyung to show it to her. The guy asked the girl to come over and asked if she was sure if the computer was really Han Jung-woon's. The girl looked at the guy with incomprehension. Dae-hoon said that the data is completely empty, he doesn't even play games. The girl asked if there was nothing at all. The guy said he could only find one photo. It showed a man lying in a hospital room cradling a small child. Dae-hoon assumed it was one of Han Jung-woon's parents, and Dae-kyung looked at the photo and asked if men were giving birth now. Dae-hoon chalked it up to overwork at school, and said that the man with the baby in his arms was just being treated at the hospital. The guy said it looked like the illness was serious because the man had passed away 18 years ago. Dae-kyung asked if Dae-hoon was sure that Jong-wook's father had passed away. The guy said that if you look at the information in the database, from the last name to the entries in the various registries, there's nothing at all in common that could link the man in the picture and Han Jong-wook. Dae-kyung said that it's pointless to dig for Han Jong-wook. It's possible that even that name is just a cover. Considering how little information is available about him, he's definitely not an ordinary high school student. Dae-kyung stands in the middle of a room full of corpses and wipes the blood off herself. Suddenly, her cell phone rings. The girl answered it, and someone on the other side was very happy to hear the girl and asked if the boss had contacted her. The two said she hadn't. Then her interlocutor said that Chairman Lee had probably gotten to her. The interlocutor said that he had everyone killed too. He asked the girl to run away from here. He said to go as far away as possible and that she should not even think of coming back. Suddenly the connection goes dead. A mechanical voice in the receiver says the caller is unavailable. You can leave a voice message. The girl immediately took off from her seat and, clutching the phone in her hands, ran somewhere. The more often she heard the same words from the phone, the more despair came over her. She threw the phone against the ground and fell to her knees and screamed. She wondered why things had turned out this way. But then she realized that she was just back in that myrtle where she had no family or home. Suddenly she heard someone's voice calling her. It was getting closer and closer. The girl opened her eyes abruptly and saw Jo Dae-hoon in front of her, who was screaming at the top of his lungs to wake the girl up. Apparently not fully awake and obeying her reflexes, the girl hit Jo Dae-hoon. Jumping up from the bed, the girl said that the guy scared her. Looking at the time, the girl asked why it was already 10 o'clock and the guy didn't wake her up. Dae-hoon said she was sleeping very soundly. The girl ran to the bathroom, yelling to Dae-hoon not to go in there. After Dae-kyung went to take a shower, she and Dae-hoon had a small meeting. The girl said that as of today, they know that there are 372 students in the school. Of those, 34 of the students are guys. 16 lads can be ruled out at once, as they have nothing to do with the chairman. That leaves another 18 guys who are still underreported. Considering the hierarchy between the students, the person they need would most likely belong to the first two ranks. If they excluded the extra of their 18 suspects, only 4 remained. Dae-hoon asked if it was possible that the chairman's son was intentionally lowering his rank. Da-kyung said it was unlikely. The guy asked why she thought that. Da-kyung said that rank in school is determined based on accurate data. Many know each other outside of school through social gatherings. Some, on the other hand, are unknown individuals at all. There are also exceptions. Since the lower ranks are treated like trash, there have been cases where, after having a falling out with the higher ranks, they managed to get away with it thanks to unknown patrons. After that, they were randomly assigned any rank. Dae-hoon said that it was all complicated for him and it would be better to go back to those 4. The guy asked if he had met one of them recently. He was referring to Lee Jae-hun. Dae-hoon said that things might be a lot easier with him. He remembered Dae-kyung saying that nothing was known about this guy. The girl had said that even so, he'd been given the rank and asked if Dae-hoon understood what the girl was getting at. Dae-hoon assumed that there was someone in tight circles who knew Jae-hyun's background. The girl said that it must be someone that Jae-hyun knows personally. Lee Jae-hyun gained a lot of influence in the first rank without even putting much effort into it. The second suspect was Oh Won-jun. Dae-hoon recognized him immediately and asked if it was the one from Won-jun Holding. Dae-kyung said it was the right guy, but asked how he knew that. Dae-hoon said that this guy has been in almost every media outlet. He's been dubbed the pure prince of the second generation of Chaebol. Dae-kyung said it's not that important. She told the guy to find out if Won-jun Holding is related to Sejong conglomerate. If related, Dae-hoon should gather as much information as possible about what exactly their relationship is based on. Now it's the turn of another suspect, Han Jung-woon. Dae-hoon immediately said that this guy reminds him of someone. Dae-kyung said that this guy was very suspicious from the beginning. He's always chasing after the girl, and he's obsessed with her. He's been doing something out of the ordinary and controlling since the first time they met. He's always going where he doesn't belong, as if Dae-kyung is his toy. Dae-hoon suggested that the guy just fell in love with Dae-kyung. Da-kyung said that no one knows anything about him, at least at school. No matter how many times she tries, she can't dig up anything on him, as if he cleaned everything up beforehand. After seeing her, he starts hitting on her, who is an undercover agent. Dae-hoon asked if Dae-kyung thinks that Han Jung-woon got close to her because he knows everything. He said that it's unlikely because it's almost impossible for something like that to happen. To the world, they don't exist. Unlike Dae-hoon, Dae-kyung, according to the documents, wasn't even born, so is there any chance that anyone knows about her? Dae-hoon said that all this information is giving him a headache, and to make things easier, he needs to find out everything about Oh Won-jun first. Dae-hoon said that there was one thing that was bothering her, but Dae-hoon was tired of hearing about it, so he took her out for a walk. Oh Won-jun met with some men and talked some business with them. One of them asked if the second part of the payment would follow immediately after the job was done or not. The guy assured them that money was not a problem. The man said they would need a photo of the target. The guy poked around on social media for a couple seconds and immediately found a photo of Ji-young together with Dae-kyung. Showing it to the men, he said that their target was this girl with black hair. He warned them not to get confused. If they touched the girl with pink hair, they wouldn't be in trouble. The man who was the head of the group asked if their target was a schoolgirl. If that was the case, he could handle it alone and there was no point in using more people. Oh Won-jun said that the girl only looked like a schoolgirl. He showed him the false tooth he had to put in after meeting Da-kyung. He said the mere thought of her knocking out his tooth with one punch made him boil with anger. If it had been that easy, he would have done it himself. The team leader said he understood. Oh Won-jun's job was only to take care of the bounty and they would handle the rest on their own. Suddenly, the second man asked if the girl reminded him of someone. He asked if the ringleader remembered the one who had taken a fancy to their elder. Won-jun was interested in this and asked him to tell him too. The man said it was their business since it had been about 20 years since then. Won-jun insisted on being told what it was all about. Then the man said he didn't even know how to put it properly. Then he showed the young master a photo and told him to look at the woman with black hair. After looking at the photo, Oh Won-jun laughed and the men said they should go now. After laughing, Won-jun said to the empty space that Lee Da-kyung was impressing him more and more. The words spoken by the lecturer passed by Dae-kyung. She was sprawled out on the desk and peacefully dozing. When she opened her eyes, she saw Jong-eun's face in front of her. Surprised by his presence, Dae-kyung immediately sat up straight. Ji-young stretched, complaining to herself that math was the last lesson. As she yawned, she noticed Dae-kyung talking to Jung-woon about something. To be more specific, Dae-kyung didn't understand why she had to run between classes during class. Jung-woon, on the other hand, nonchalantly replied that it was more interesting here, and no one had asked him if he could or couldn't do that, and he wasn't carrying his bag at all. Suddenly, Ji-young stood in front of them with her arms at her sides. She noticed that the two were once again stuck to each other, but if they wanted to continue, they'd better move somewhere with fewer witnesses. To that end, the girl had hustled and was now dragging them to the exit of the classroom. The three of them walked down the hallway. Jong-un asked what the girls had been doing over the weekend. Dae-kyung only hummed, though she had actually spent the weekend studying the students, including Jong-woon. Ji-young, on the other hand, asked the guy why he started attending school daily after Dae-kyung transferred. Jong-un chuckled, evasively answering that he was skipping classes for personal reasons rather than purposefully. Dae Kyung fell behind her acquaintances, citing the need to call home. While Ji-young and Jung went ahead, the girl texted Dae-hoon that she'd be in an apartment 10 minutes away from school and asked that if there was nothing urgent, to text rather than call. Won-jun walked by, hitting her shoulder roughly. Dae Kyung's smartphone fell out of her hands with the screen down. The girl gritted her teeth in anger and picked up the phone. A spider web of cracks spread across the screen, hinting at the need for repair. Dae Kyung turned to the culprit, who was having such a hard time just bypassing the girl instead of pushing the issue. She demanded that she pay for the repairs and then get the hell out of here. The irritated Won-jun responded by offering to pay for Dae Kyung's knocked out teeth, but the girl called the dentist services moral compensation for Ji-young. With a grin and raised eyebrows, the guy still decided to pay for the repairs, but in a very humiliating way he threw the money under Dae Kyung's feet and said the rest of the money would not be returned. Won-jun hinted at the girl's poverty and even mockingly wondered how she could even get into this school. Dae Kyung was barely holding back the urge to nail the bastard. However, she'd recently horrified Dae-hoon by threatening Ji-young with a fork on her first day and pummeling Won-jun. He had shaken her by the chest and tried to put it into her dark-haired head that this was an unusual school and not just any student. Kyung wasn't supposed to attract attention there at all, especially not like this. Dae-hoon had forbidden the girl to get involved in anything. So now Dae Kyung turned around and walked away, saying that the money would be enough for the repairs. Suddenly, Won-jun noticed Dae Kyung's striking resemblance to her mother. The girl froze, but Jung-woon stopped her from doing anything rash. Dae Kyung rubbed her neck, exhaled, and obediently walked with her boyfriend outside. In the car, Ji-young was not surprised to hear that Won-jun had picked on her again, because he was always bullying those below him. And Dae Kyung also had a fight with him. Jung-woon didn't know anything about the fight because he didn't care about Won-jun. Dae Kyung frowned. Did this guy really didn't care about anyone but her? When Jung-woon asked Dae Kyung why Dae Kyung fought with Won-jun, she told him about the embarrassment with Ji-young like nothing happened. Ji-young, blushing in embarrassment, reminded her who caused it all to happen. However, she didn't do anything about it since she thought Dae Kyung was a primal princess. After all, the girl is still fine, though anyone who pestered Won-jun felt sorry regardless of rank. It wasn't that the guy was powerful, he just had a lousy temper. He was always making others feel bad and forcing them to give up. That's why no one dared to mess with him. Dae Kyung asked if it was because of the SA-young conglomerate. Ji-young hissed as she was wary of talking about such topics, and Jung-eun smirked. Ji-young led them to her private suite. They started to choose food from the delivery, but in the end they never came to a decision. In the process, Ji-young got a FaceTime call from her dad and she hurriedly pushed her guests into the closet since she wasn't allowed to bring guys home. Why push Dae Kyung in there as well, the girl didn't explain. And while Ji-young was explaining herself to her father and assuring him that she didn't bring any boy into the house, Dae Kyung had to cuddle up to Jung-woon's chest. Dae Kyung tried to push Jung-woon away from her as far as possible, but the clothes hangers behind her were being held back, and they flew down with a clatter because of Dae Kyung's another attempt to free up her personal space. Ji-young's father immediately became agitated when he heard the commotion in his daughter's room. She tried to change the subject to avoid uncomfortable questions, but the man was sure he heard rumbling coming from the closet. Ji-young ended up showing her father the dressing room to make sure no one was there. Dae Kyung, still forced to snuggle up to Jung-woon, didn't understand why she had to hide. But suddenly, the thought of capitalizing on the investigation with the help of Ji-young's father crossed her mind. To do so, she called out loudly to the girl. Ji-young became nervous. Her father attacked again with suspicions that she had started dating Won-jun or someone similar and was now hiding him. This did not please the man at all. Ji-young ended up also showing the closet where the guests were hiding, but which was now as if there was no one in it. At least on top of it. On the bottom were Jung-woon and Dae Kyung, whom the guy was covering his mouth with. This helped Ji-young get away from her guardian father's suspicions, and citing the need to go to the restroom, she ended the FaceTime call. Jung-eun finally let Dae Kyung go and she fell out of the closet. Ji-young apologized for her father, who was overprotective at times. Dae Kyung, however, clearly didn't accept the apology and threw a hanger at the girl. She was about to leave and only the offer of food stopped her. Now the three of them were eating. Dae Kyung planned to go home right after she ate. Jong-un offered to walk her out. Ji-young, blushing, watched their interaction with interest. But Dae-kyung declined, calling the offer as creepy because she didn't know if the guy would hit on her or if there would be any problems from being around him. Jung-woon was clearly puzzled by this abrupt refusal. Ji-young silently squealed at the exciting action unfolding in front of her. The school had never had so much fun before. Still, Jung-woon had insisted since he was worried about Won-jun's attacks towards Dae-kyung. The girl didn't think it was a problem since she could deal with an army of people like Won-jun if she needed to. Ji-young and Jung-woon concluded that Dae-kyung reminded them of a gang leader at times. The girl was instantly covered in sweat from such a frivolous assumption. She didn't understand how they all came to such conclusions. Ji-young didn't pay much attention to Dae-kyung's reaction and wondered what the bandits were wrapping the knives around for. Dae-kyung and Jung-woon together explained that it was so that the hand wouldn't slip, to avoid leaving imprints, and so that the blow wouldn't be fatal. Ji-young was surprised that they knew such details, but the guy shrugged it off, calling it logical conclusions that could just be reached. Ji-young took it personally, thinking that Jong-un didn't even hold her for a living being that was capable of understanding, but for some kind of plankton. The guy countered that plankton were quite living beings. Ji-young turned indignantly at him, and Dae-kyung laughed at their altercation. Jong-un stared at the girl in surprise. It was the first time he had seen her smile. Ji-young, for that matter, did too. Dae-kyung thought she had smiled at them before, but the way she was grinding her teeth with a grim expression on her face didn't fit the definition of a smile. They didn't pursue this topic further. Instead, Ji-young asked Dae-kyung how it felt to be popular. The girl called her acquaintance's words complete nonsense. When Ji-young stuttered about Dae-kyung's date with Jae-hyun in an effort to prove her point about popularity, the girl lay on top of her, trying to shut her up. Jong-un started cleaning up while the girls were having fun, or rather one of them was suffering from nausea while the other was looking at her smartphone like nothing happened. Ji-young looked at him, noting how caring and diligent he was, but unfortunately he wasn't her type, because she liked the pretty ones. Dae-kyung was surprised, because if Jung-woon isn't handsome, then who is? Ji-young immediately shouted to the guy that Dae-kyung thinks he's handsome. The girl threatened her, and when asked how many relationships she had, it turned out to be 0. This really surprised Ji-young, and she started looking at the acquaintance from different angles, trying to find a flaw. She found it hard to believe that the beautiful Dae-kyung was not in a relationship. Jung-woon, who had come to see them fiddling, on the other hand, was guessing about the girl's lack of experience. But then his phone rang and Dae-kyung found it the perfect moment to run away, which she actually did. On the way, Dae-kyung thought about how Jung-woon was obviously worried about the wrong person. The girl had entered school to kill a person in the first place. But it's normal for these high school students to have crushes and friendships. Thinking about it made Dae-kyung feel like crap. Probably because she wanted to feel something like that too. While putting on her school uniform and playing a high school girl, Dae-kyung was too relaxed. Suddenly, a man came from behind and put a knife to the girl's throat. The unknown man told her to do as he was told or he would cut her. Dae-kyung was surrounded. However, the girl didn't look scared. She only clarified with them her assumption that Won-jun was their customer. One of the men put his hand on her shoulder, but Dae-kyung grabbed his hand and pulled him to the ground. A fight broke out. One of the men even managed to wound the girl tangentially in the elbow area, but she ended up smashing his nose and taking the knife away. The attackers, who didn't expect the seemingly fragile girl to fight back, were confused, and then, angry, threw themselves into the fight. But in the end, Dae-kyung almost stabbed the man she'd knocked down with the knife, but at the last moment she remembered Dae-hoon's displeased voice forbidding her to touch anyone who wasn't involved in the case. She bounced back. The man thought she had not had the guts and immediately kicked her in the face. One of them ran away, but Dae-kyung didn't follow him and checked the pockets of the already defeated man. He had nothing on him but a fake ID and a disposable cell phone. Just ordinary gangsters. It was unlikely that the chairman had sent them. It was more likely that Won-jun had actually pulled something stupid like this. Suddenly, a third man came up from behind and smashed a bottle against the back of Dae-kyung's head, and then hit her again. The unknown man, cursing at the useless thugs, hoisted the girl's body on his shoulder and carried her away. Jong-un returned to the room and noticed Dae-kyung's absence. Ji-young explained that the acquaintance had left about 10 minutes ago. She tried to assure the guy that he shouldn't worry too much about someone like Dae-kyung, but Jong-un left anyway, calling the girl incessantly. However, she didn't answer. As he passed by an alleyway, he inadvertently heard a battered man talking on the phone. Jong Yoon snatched the smartphone away from him when he heard the name of the place, an abandoned factory in the mountains. The man squawked at such an antics, but the guy only aloofly asked if he was from Yanbian, because of all the places Wonjun could have hired them from. That was the most likely. Jong Yoon then stood up and crouched down near the pool of blood. When asked who he was, the guy said that he knew the likes of this thug's trash well, including their threats and what they were most afraid of. Jong Yoon also gave the gang leader's name, Chan. This finally threw the gangster off balance. However, Jong Yoon did not answer the repeated questions about his identity, but demanded to know exactly where the factory was, where Dae Kyung was taken to. Dae Kyung was splashed with water. She came to her senses and a smirking Wonjun was sitting in front of her. Lee Dae Kyung moved her bound hands. Wonjun smirked, because he was sure that her hands were tied tightly. He scoffed, but Dae Kyung didn't listen to him. She was counting the people in the room and estimating how many more might be at the exit. But Wonjun didn't like her slithering gaze and he stepped on the prisoner's chest. Instead of dutifully keeping quiet and listening to the stream of filth pouring down on her, Dae Kyung asked what her captor planned to do next. She felt like crap physically, but she didn't show it. Wonjun thoughtfully voiced the idea of having a little fun with Dae Kyung, to which she called him trash. She wasn't intimidated by the veiled threats and hints of a beating. She only laughed at them, doubting the guy's capabilities. However, Wonjun didn't need to get his hands dirty, because he could always delegate it to other people. This was what the guy considered his main advantage and strength. Using violence seemed ineffective to him, for in this way one could only dominate on the street, and afterwards stand under the likes of Wonjun. Dae Kyung was even more convinced that the guy was trash because he himself was also on Jae Hyun's back, a loyal dog. The funny thing was that Jae Hyun seemed to despise the likes of Wonjun. Dae Kyung's words made Jae Hyun laugh. According to him, Jae Hyun just needed him. But Wonjun didn't intend to talk about it further. Instead, he took out a photo he found from his pocket and talked about the girl's mother. Dae Kyung was sure that no information, especially from those times, had been preserved. However, there was a woman quite similar to Dae Kyung in the photo, but an interesting detail was hiding in the background. There was a little girl. From the content of the photo, it was clear that Dae Kyung's mother was most likely a prostitute. At least that's what Wonjun had concluded. He was now thinking the same thing about Dae Kyung, suggesting that the girl might have had a special connection with the principal for the sake of studying at their school. He began to hint that he could tell all about it, and if this information got to the influential people, it would not only lead to expulsion from school, but also to much bigger problems in life. Dae Kyung, not listening, cut him off. She advised him to try telling him. The boy asked how she got such confidence in her abilities. Looking straight into her captor's eyes, the girl answered, simply because Wonjun is going to die today, and the information won't get any further than this room. Wonjun, confident in his impunity, made a fatal mistake. He came closer. Dae Kyung kicked him in the face and he paid for it. The boy screamed in pain, ending up on all fours. Dae Kyung called them idiots, because they should have tied her up completely, not just her hands. Enraged by his captive's antics, Wonjun grabbed the bat, determined to leave her legless. Dae Hoon wondered where Dae Kyung had gone. He was indecisive. On the one hand, he was asked not to call. On the other hand, he was thinking of taking a chance. In the end, Dae Hoon looked at the girl's geolocation, but she suddenly lost her signal. The bandits sorted out the phone. Wonjun put down the bloody bat. The girl sat with her head hanging limply on her chest as if she had lost consciousness. Wonjun cursed and threw the bat away. One of the bandits crouched down beside Dae Kyung, intending to check if she was alive at all. However, he was suddenly grabbed by the neck with a firm grip so that he couldn't even breathe. From the back, it looked as if he was just sitting there, for the slight shivering went unnoticed by the others. When his comrade leaned toward the man, about to touch his shoulder, Dae Kyung threw him off. The girl stood up, gripping her head with her freed hand. She looked at Wonjun and ordered him to stay where he was. Dae Kyung planned to kill last. Wonjun didn't understand how Dae Kyung was able to get out. However, everything pointed to the fact that she had pissed off her captor on purpose to divert attention away from his hands and free herself. The guy ordered to capture the girl or even kill her if necessary. The bandits rushed towards Dae Kyung. The girl grabbed a pickaxe and smashed the head of the nearest attacker. Won-jun, horrified by the bloody picture, clamped his hand over his mouth. His handmaidens meanwhile grabbed Da-kyung from the back, but she was still able to throw the man's carcass off of her. Won-jun was falling deeper and deeper into the abyss of despair. His men were falling one by one. He even started to dial the emergency number, but he was stopped by the leader of the bandits. If Won-jun called the cops, he would have to admit to the kidnapping, but the guy thought that this case could be hushed up and now it was more important to survive. The bandit offered to kill the girl, but he demanded to pay a considerable sum of money for the cleaning and the wake of his guys. Won-jun hesitated. He wasn't sure if he should go as far as murder. Nevertheless, one crossed glance with Da-kyung, insane in her rage, was enough for him to put any thoughts of morality out of his head. The bandit grinned and stepped back into the shadows. Da-kyung, meanwhile, counted the dead and moved toward Won-jun, who was left alone. Blood dripped from the pickaxe. The boy, who was on the verge of fear, shook and screamed. Da-kyung raised the pickaxe, but a man flew up from behind and stabbed her in the side. The girl had miscalculated. There were 6 bandits. The man felled her to the floor. The girl's frantic gaze, searching for a way to survive, caught on the chain. She frantically snatched it up and wrapped it around the bandit's neck. The tightening of the metal chain made the man blush and released the knife from his weakened fingers. Da-kyung crawled out from under the bulky body and pulled off her top sweater. Tearing it into shreds, she tightly bandaged the knife wound. She got to her feet again, retrieving her pickaxe. Won-jun, who had reached the point of hysteria, called her a monster while crying. He immediately tried to negotiate, offered 100 million for his life, or 1 billion or 10, 20, even 50, just to survive. The boy shrank back, whimpering pleas for mercy. Da-kyung decided to take advantage of Won-jun's willingness to do anything and asked him a question about the heir to the SA-young conglomerate, Chairman Lee's son, or rather who he was. Under Da-kyung Won-jun's intense and creepy gaze, he almost called out a name, but suddenly a boot rattled the door and it swung open. An armed police squad flew in. Da-kyung was immediately ordered to drop his weapon, and Won-jun breathed out a sigh of relief, realizing that he was saved. The police hesitated, as the victim seemed to be a girl, not the other way around. Behind the backs of the men stood an astonished Jong-un. They met Da-kyung's gaze, and the exhausted girl collapsed unconscious on the floor. The first aid medics found Da-kyung bleeding internally. Dae-hoon made his way over to her, trying to bring the girl to her senses. The paramedics tried to pull the guy away so that he wouldn't interfere with their care, but Dae-hoon persisted. The only thing that sobered him up was the statement that if he got in the way, the victim would really die. In the next instant, the police started leading the bystanders away from the scene. However, they were stopped by Jung-woon, who called Dae-hoon a relative of Da-kyung. Won-jun, on the other hand, was led outside in handcuffs. The guy struggled under the hands of the men, claimed that he was not a murderer but rather a victim, and tried to press his influence. But no effect could be produced in the end, for Jong-un came to them with an arrest warrant. Da-kyung was loaded into an ambulance on a gurney. Dae-hoon was about to go to the hospital with them, but before he did, Jung-woon stopped him and handed him a smartphone that he thought might belong to Da-kyung. But Dae-hoon assumed that the girl's phone had been dumped in a nearby river, and it was probably Won-jun's thing. But the guy didn't refuse, and after thanking him, he hurriedly followed the medics to the car. Da-kyung deliriously saw herself clutching the chairman's throat, hoping to kill him. She longed for him to die in agony like her people. To die in agony, bleeding to death. But the chairman only grinned, calling her naive. Killing only him wouldn't change anything, and the nightmare Da-kyung was living in wouldn't end. Someone else was standing behind her back and was already pointing a weapon at her. At this point, Da-kyung opened her eyes. At her bedside were Dae-hoon and Jeong, who immediately burst into tears of joy and rushed over to her. She hugged Da-kyung so tightly that it was hard for her to even breathe. Judging from Jeong's words of remorse, she was told that the girl had been in an accident. Dae-hoon gestured for Da-kyung to keep quiet and not to change her mind. It turned out that Jeong and Dae-hoon had been chatting for 2 days while Da-kyung was unconscious. Jeong thought he was Da-kyung's brother and security guard, who, being from a rich family, had taken the job for his cousin. The girl resented that she wasn't introduced to him earlier because he wasn't like the usual rich people. Dae-hoon had obviously told her this nonsense and it was annoying. Instead of responding to Jeong's lamentations, Da-kyung asked about Jung-woon. When the girl found out that it was Jong-un who called first for help, she once again wondered who this person was. Here, Dae-hoon asked Ji-young to leave the room as he wanted to have a serious talk with Dae-kyung alone. The girl didn't argue and obediently left the room, wishing her acquaintance to get better soon. When they were alone, Dae-hoon handed Da-kyung Won-jun's cell phone. On the screen was a terse message from Jae-hoon. Just do as told. Won-jun and Sayoung had nothing but simple company deals, so maybe Jae-hoon was involved somehow. Dae-kyung handed over the phone and told Dae-hoon to go. Before walking out, he tried to cheer the girl up by showing his scar on his stomach and calling them in a whole duo. Da-kyung irritably asked him to finally get out of the room. On the bench next to Jae-hoon, Jong-un sat down. He assumed that Jae-hoon was waiting for a call from Won-jun. Jong-un was sure that the guy knew about Won-jun digging up Da-kyung. The guy didn't say anything. Jong-un continued. He didn't care about Jae-hoon's plans, but he advised him not to make an enemy of himself, thus warning him. Dae-kyung walked down the corridor of the school, holding onto the wall. There was still some time left before her discharge, but she had escaped from the hospital early because it was forbidden to exercise there, and the attending doctor had even threatened to perform surgery without anesthesia if she continued to break her activity regimen. Now the girl felt disgusted. A short student came running up from behind, addressing the girl as Mrs. Dae-kyung. He introduced himself as Kim Min-jae from the second class of the third group. He was alarmed that Won-jun hadn't shown up since the girl had gone to the hospital, and the thought popped into his bright head that Dae-kyung had gotten rid of the older man. And if that was the case, the guy considered her his savior. Dae-kyung, without thinking, dropped that Won-jun himself had helped and she never had time to touch him. Min-jae deduced from her words that she really ran into Won-jun, not an accident. The guy asked Dae-kyung to let him become her slave and do whatever she wanted. Dae-kyung froze in amazement and then took off, hoping to get away from yet another fucked up man in her life. She made her way to the nurse's station, feeling a sense of déjà vu. Jong-un was after her too. Her thoughts turned to Jong-eun, who had been at that warehouse when the police stormed it. He must have seen everything that happened there. Dae-kyung had no idea how she could explain it now. Her head was splitting and she collapsed on the bed, not even noticing that someone was already sitting on it. That someone was Jae-hoon, on whose leg Dae-kyung was now lying. The girl looked thoughtfully at his face for a couple seconds, contemplating whether or not she wanted to discuss anything with him. In the end, she decided to just rest, and so she turned away. Jae-hoon did speak to the girl, though. He knew from Jung-woon that Dae-kyung still had some time left before she was discharged, but she was here. The guy inquired about her well-being, but Dae-kyung irritably asked him to keep his voice down. Jae-hoon exhaled heavily and apologized. This interested Dae-kyung, and she sat up, asking what exactly the guy was apologizing for. After all, was it Won-jun's fault, or was it all from Jae-hoon's own suggestion after all? The guy shook his head negatively and evasively apologized for not following Won-jun. Da-kyung squinted suspiciously, mentally humming. The girl decided to take advantage of the situation and decided to demand not just words but action as an apology. Namely, she wanted to visit Jae-hoon's house. The guy gawked in surprise and refused at first. However, he still had to bring Dae-kyung to his house. Unfortunately, this guy too, like Jong-un, lived alone. They were met by a maid who was quite surprised that Jae-hyun had brought someone with him. And not just anyone, but a girl. The guy asked the maid to stop talking nonsense and just set the table for one more person. Dae-kyung was assigned a separate guest room where she sprawled out on the bed. Her head was buzzing and her whole body ached. Dae-kyung had a thought that she should have listened to the doctors after all, and not overexert herself. The girl sat down, deciding that this wasn't the time for sniveling and complaining. Everything needed to be explored. Behind one of the doors, she spotted Jae-hoon. Da-kyung hurriedly apologized and was about to leave, but her legs gave out, so the guy barely had time to grab her by the elbow. They slid down to the floor together. Jae-hoon touched Da-kyung's overly hot forehead with the palm of his hand. The guy had advised her to take an antipyretic before the meal, but the food was more important to her. Jae-hyun irritably remarked that Dae-kyung was always stubborn. Suddenly, the girl noticed something strange and grabbed Jae-hyun's arm and looked at his elbow, which was covered with bruises from multiple injections. Dae-kyung asked Jae-hoon what those marks on the place of the elbow bend were. However, the guy didn't answer, but only hurriedly pushed his guest out the door, citing that he needed to change his clothes. This reaction was somehow too abrupt. Dae-kyung speculated that it might have been drug marks. There was a rumor that Se-young was involved in distributing illegal substances, but the girl didn't know whether it was best to find evidence of Jae-hyun's involvement with Se-young or to end things right away. Fortunately, the bloodthirsty thoughts were interrupted by the maid's voice calling for dinner. Dae-kyung forgot about everything and gorged herself on the food, which was delicious. Meanwhile, the maid was happy that the girl was able to make friends with the cold Jae-hyun. The woman didn't believe the objection that they weren't close at all. She found them to be a beautiful couple and had gone so far as to talk about getting married. Dae-kyung, admittedly, even hesitated. Perhaps if she could eat food like this every day, then getting married to Jae-hyun didn't seem like such a terrible idea either. Carelessly, Dae-kyung expressed it out loud as well, saying that the words about getting married sounded good. Jae-hyun choked up, looking at the guest with embarrassment. The maid rejoiced, and the guy asked them to stop acting like that. He turned the topic to the competition. The thing was that every student had to participate in at least one competition. Personally, Jae-hyun participated in the shootout. Dae-kyung immediately thought that the weapons being used were real. Jae-hyun got up to show off the competition gun. Their school was pretty specific, it even had equestrian sports. And when the guy took out the gun in the shadows, it was impossible to see it in great detail. But Dae-kyung had already drawn an image of a real gun. The same one that the stranger in her delirium was aiming at her. When Jae-hyun held out the gun to her, the girl snatched it reflexively. Instead of a real gun, it was a toy gun with a rubber ball inside as a projectile. Jae-hyun offered Dae-kyung to try out the gun, and she happily shot him with the ball right in the temple. The girl noted that the power of the gun was not bad, but the projectile was too soft. According to the maid, the gun was made by Min Jae, the same one who had accosted Dae-kyung in the hallway. His family traded guns overseas. The woman reported Min Jae's excellent mind and ability to come up with amazing ideas, so he could be useful to Dae-kyung. The maid left to get fruit, leaving the schoolchildren alone. Dae-kyung returned to the topic of the injection marks on Jae-hyun's arm. The boy was in no hurry to answer, and the guest assumed that he thought it was unfair to share the information for nothing. So Dae-kyung decided to share his secret, the fact that if you strain your ears, they'll perk up. Jae-hyun snorted at that. However, he still evasively replied that the injection marks were due to illness. Dae-kyung took note and decided to try to hack into the hospital records later. Jae-hyun didn't take his gaze off of her. Eventually, he asked why Dae-kyung's pupils were dilated. The girl chalked it up to overwork since she'd recently gotten a beating because of someone. The maid came back with fruit. She wanted to attend the competition because outsiders were allowed to take the spectator seats, but Jae-hyun was against it. In the meantime, the woman took a knife and began to peel an apple. Dae-kyung, who was watching, abruptly remembered how the thug had stabbed her in the side. She felt nauseous. She jumped to her feet, knocking over a chair in the process, and fell to her knees, covering her mouth with her hand. Jae-hyun rushed to her, in passing ordering a car to be called to take the girl to the hospital. However, Dae-kyung was horrified by the idea, because there was a doctor there performing surgeries without anesthesia. Dae-kyung woke up at 3 in the morning. She didn't immediately realize where she was and was glad that she could still sleep before school. But after a few moments, she realized that she was lying on a bed in an unfamiliar room, with a frightened Jae-hyun sitting on a chair next to her. Dae-kyung sat up. She became agitated, not realizing where her phone and clothes were. Jae-hyun tried to calm her down, but eventually the girl threw him onto the bed, clawing at his neck and hovering over him menacingly, asking what the hell was going on and where she'd been dragged to. The guy wheezed, and only then did the grip loosen. Jae-hyun, panting, explained that they were in his private hospital room, and Dae-kyung's belongings were lying on a nightstand nearby. He assured that he hadn't done anything to the girl. Dae-kyung was surprised to realize that Jae-hyun wasn't lying about being sick, since he even had a private room. However, when asked to tell him what kind of illness he had, he once again refused. The only person who knew about it was Won-joon, whom Jae-hyun had known since childhood. As children, they had fought often, and because of Jae-hyun's condition, there were times when it would come to complications. Dae-kyung thought for a moment. The guy rubbed his neck awkwardly. He had heard that the girl had gotten hurt a lot because of Won-joon. It looked like Jae-hyun really didn't know anything about Won-joon's attack, and it wasn't his order after all. Hearing about Da Kyung's suspicions of his involvement in the kidnapping, Jae Hyun was unpleasantly surprised, not realizing who he was even taken for. However, Da Kyung seemed logical, because the guy was secretly digging for her, but he didn't tell her anything about himself. Why would he even dig for a stranger? Jae Hyun apologized that it would probably happen again in the future. Since Da Kyung's transfer, the flow has gotten weird. Besides, it was Jung Woon himself that Jae Hyun was digging thoroughly under, not Da Kyung. That's all the guy could tell. Da Kyung was at a loss as to what exactly Jae-han meant right now. The girl found this situation perfect for getting information. She offered to help each other since she needed information about Jung Woon too. More specifically, Dae Kyung offered to exchange the information she received. Jae Hyun sort of agreed, and only told in vague terms that he wasn't originally planning to head the company, but now it was necessary. But in order to achieve the goal, one must prove. And here, Jung-un could be the missing link. Da Kyung only became more confused and asked to be more specific. Instead of answering, Jae Hyun suggested that the girl tell more about herself. For example, why would she dig for Jung-woon? Da Kyung somehow didn't think of that question and mumbled a lot. She mumbled that she liked Jung-woon. There was an awkward silence. Jae Hyun seemed to believe it, but said that if that was the case, he didn't have any interesting information for Dae Kyung. Besides, if it was only because of sympathy, the girl shouldn't be in Jae Hyun's house at all. The guy sank down on the bed tiredly and offered to lend the girl his driver to get back home. Da Kyung realized that she had made a mistake somewhere, since his attitude towards her had changed drastically. But instead of agreeing to the driver, she asked to stay at Jae-han's house because school was close by, and she had to get ready soon anyway. The guy, turning his back to the wall, allowed it, but on the condition that Da Kyung would be in this room and wake him up. Jung was already blatantly late. She was going to have to eat lunch alone again today if Da Kyung didn't show up. But then her eyes caught the familiar back of Jung Woon, whom she immediately approached. Ji-young asked him about Da Kyung, but the guy thought she was still in the hospital. However, the girl came yesterday and just disappeared in the middle of the day without saying anything. She didn't answer her cell phone either. Right in front of them, a car pulled up on the sidewalk and Da Kyung got out, followed by Jae Hyun. Ji-young, who had pounced with a hug, froze awkwardly as she looked at the guy. She assumed that Da Kyung and Jae Hyun met on the way, and that's why they came together. However, the guy quickly refuted that theory, saying that they had been together since yesterday. Da Kyung became indignant. Worried that the acquaintances would misunderstand the meaning of those words, Jung-un smirked crookedly. There was a tense atmosphere between Jae Hyun and Jung-woon. Ji-young, trying to smooth things over, reminded her that the first class would be over soon. She grabbed Da Kyung's hand and took off running, dragging her classmate behind her. In class, Ji-young pestered Da Kyung with constant messages, trying to find out if there was something between her and Jae Hyun. The annoyed girl asked her why she even cared. Jung-woon asked the same thing to Jae Hyun. He didn't understand why Jong-un suddenly became obsessed with the girl. The guy looked away and replied that there was no special reason for him to be interested in someone. Jae Hyun was frankly starting to piss him off, with his words and suspicions of a secret agenda. Jae Hyun turned to Jong-woon and deigned to answer the question about what they were doing with Dae Kyung. However, he phrased it in a streamlined manner, clearly leaving out important details. Jae Hyun said that the girl shared two secrets with him. One was about her body and the other was about someone she liked. But he never gave the name of the specific person, leaving Jung-woon lost in speculation. Meanwhile, Ji-yeon persisted in trying to find out what exactly happened between Jae Hyun and Dae Kyung. She refused to believe the honest answer that they just had lunch and talked. Their altercation was interrupted by Min Jae walking up. He was about to give something to Dae Kyung. On the other side of the hallway, Jung-woon approached, wanting to talk to Da Kyung alone. As a result, the girl was already being pressured from three sides. She couldn't stand the pressure and jumped out the window, breaking the glass with her body. At the nurse's station, the nurse noticed that Jae Hyun was coming to her with headaches. She started to tell Jae Hyun that it wouldn't do him any good to take so many pills, but Da Kyung burst into the nurse's station. The nurse was horrified at the amount of glass shards on the girl's body. She treated the wounds, which Dae Kyung attributed to falling down the stairs, and advised her to go to the hospital after all. However, the girl had no intention of showing up at such establishments again. Jae Hyun noticed that Dae Kyung's ankle was swollen. The nurse, reassured by the words that the students were buddies, left to get medical supplies, asking the guy to take care of the injured girl. When the woman left, Jae Hyun wondered how come the girl kept ending up injured. Dae Kyung blamed it on fate. She also remembered that she had a shootout at the competition draw, which was also a sign of bad luck. Although it wasn't even Dae Kyung but Jiyoung, Jae-hyun was starting to get annoyed with her classmate, and she thought that she was going to kill her one day. Jae-hyun hummed at that, smiling at the corners of his lips. The nurse's station became quiet. It was okay to be quiet because Jae-hyun wouldn't bother with unnecessary talk. Without a backward thought, Da-kyung exhaled in relief that she was very comfortable with Jae-hyun. The guy instantly blushed, raising his eyebrows in surprise. A tall man wearing glasses walked into Won-jun's room. The boy was alarmed, calling for security. The sudden guest didn't seem to be deterred. He held out a sheet of paper, and Won-jun turned deathly pale and shut up. The man had come to see him about a recent case involving Dae Kyung. Won-jun mumbled in a voice trembling with fear that the girl definitely didn't know anything. The man sat down on the chair opposite. He wasn't really interested in Won-jun himself. He demanded the guy to tell everything about Lee Dae-kyung. Da-kyung, remembering Jung-woon's desire to talk to her, went to his house. Before the conversation started, the guy handed her a gift from Min Jae, a gun for the competition. Da-kyung was confused by such a presentation. But Jung-woon was more concerned about why the girl was sharing personal things with Jae-hyun, even though she is more close to Jung-woon. A worried Da-kyung wanted to justify herself, but the guy interrupted her and informed her that he was aware of the top secret. With those words, Jung-woon showed the very photo that Won-jun tried to blackmail Da-kyung with. It was the one he found with the phone. He knew who that phone belonged to too, Won-jun. And having laid out all the cards in front of Dae Kyung, the guy asked her if she was ready to consider him now. The girl saw it as a threat, although Jong-un tried to deny it, saying that he had no reason to do that to someone he was infatuated with. Da-kyung batted away the hand that Jong-un had extended to her face and rose to her feet. She finally decided to clarify an important point. Jong-un was at that factory after all, and had definitely seen everything that had happened there. Did he really continue to be infatuated with Da-kyung even after she killed a man? But Jong-un didn't look worried. The guy explained his reaction by saying that those people deserve to die with their dirty deeds. But that raised even more questions for Da-kyung. The dark deeds of those bandits, the fact that Won-jun had targeted the girl, and finding that abandoned factory. Da-kyung felt as if Jong-un knew everything. The main question that came out of that was, who is Jong-un exactly? The guy got up from his seat. He described himself as just a smart kid with good intuition. The guy assumed that right now Da-kyung's mind was thinking, should I kill him right now? Besides, Jung-woon was sure that Da-kyung had never loved anyone. So Jae-hyun's words were a lie. However, he wondered if the girl had said Jong-woon's name when she told Jae-hyun that she liked someone. Da-kyung felt waves of irritation rising from within caused by Jong-woon's stare. It was as if he could see right through her. The girl looked away and said that since Jong-un knew about one of her secrets, it would be nice if he shared his in return. The guy showed her the gunshot wound mark and also shared that he had a person he wanted to kill, namely his father. Da-kyung was confused. Didn't Jong-un's father die 18 years ago? Without thinking, the girl said it out loud, but immediately clamped her mouth shut in horror. Such a botched screw-up. However, Jung-woon assured her that he was happy that Dae-kyung was so interested in him since she was even digging for him. He admitted that the father he wants to kill is not really his father, but rather the person who took away everything he holds most dear. Chairman Lee, the manager of Sion. Jong-un's assassination attempt has failed. In the morning, yawning, Da-kyung went to the shooting competition. She didn't get much sleep, as she spent the whole night thinking about who else Jong-un could have been in such a case. The girl was allowed into the grounds. Her mind was so messed up that she didn't notice the man walking next to her, and the man confronted Dae-kyung and confused all the papers. The man with glasses apologized and asked her to ignore him. Da-kyung planned to do so, but her gaze fell on a business card that had fallen out of the stranger's papers. It belonged to the executive director of Saeyoung Construction Company, Shin Myung-han. The man asked the hesitant girl for directions to classroom 2-2. Da-kyung didn't just decide to give the location. She decided to personally take the strange stranger there. On the way, Dae-kyung asked the man if he worked at the school, and when she learned that he worked at a construction company as the head of the department, she was finally convinced that the business card belonged to this man. The man found the girl's inquisitiveness amusing. He had come to the competition to support his cousin, whom he had not seen for a long time. Here, they approached the right class and said goodbye. Dae-kyung frankly couldn't believe that such a person could come to school in person just to support his cousin. She tried to see who the superintendent was talking to now, but students were entering the classroom and crowding Dae-kyung. There was no way to see anything, and she was pulled from behind by Ji-young, who appeared at the wrong time. The girl pulled her classmate behind her without listening to her objections. In class, Ji-young forced Dae-kyung to wear a crow mascot costume. The girl liked Jung-woon's costume much better, however, and thought it was the only one that was more or less normal. Dae-kyung wanted a tiger costume too. Meanwhile, Ji-young was trying to draw her classmate a mustache, but because she was twitching, the line was crooked. Ji-young and Jung-woon laughed when they saw this makeup. An enraged Dae-kyung threw Ji-young to the floor and painted her face with ridiculous scribbles and the word stupid. The girl had to scrub away the ugliness while Da-kyung smirked contentedly. Then her gaze fell on Jung-woon, who was laughing too. The only thing that saved him from righteous anger was that it was already time to leave. At the assembly, the principal was given the floor. Dae-kyung, to the surprise of her classmate, dozed off standing up. The principal's speech ended, and he announced the start of the competition. There were loud shouts that woke Da-kyung up. Ji-young pestered her with tug of war preparations, but the girl was somehow lazy. Besides, she spotted the familiar figure of Oh-won Joan in the crowd and decided to approach. As soon as she saw Da-kyung, he panicked. Meanwhile, the girl noticed that it was convenient to have a lot of money, since Won-jun had come to the school after what he had done. The boy's legs were filled with fear, and he rushed away from Da-kyung. The girl looked after him, thinking that she couldn't leave him like that. He could have blurted out that she was looking for Chairman Lee's son. On the other hand, the police didn't question Dae-kyung at all. While the girl was thinking hard, all the students, including Ji-young, were laughing at Won-jun, who had wet himself. Wiping her tears from laughing, Ji-young asked Da-kyung if anyone would come to support her at the competition. A cousin, for example. The girl sincerely thought that no one would come, but her hopes were dashed. Standing nearby was Dae-hoon with a ridiculous sign that said Dairy Lee Dae-kyung. When he approached her, Da-kyung indignantly reminded him that hackers aren't actually allowed to shine right now. Dae-hoon explained in a whisper that he was going to try to hack into the server room and download the student database, and only spoke louder to say that Jae-hoon had escorted him out and that he was long overdue for a walk in the fresh air. Da-kyung slapped her face, and Ji-young was simply fascinated by Dae-hoon. Jung-woon, who wanted to take a picture with Dae-kyung as a souvenir came over, but he ran his eyes over Jae-hoon and froze. The awkward silence was interrupted by Dae-hoon, who offered to take a picture of everyone together. When Dae-kyung had a picture together in her hands, Ji-yeon embarrassedly admitted that she was happy to be friends with the girl. That's why she asked after graduation to not ignore her. Da-kyung said that she would gladly miss every message. A tug-of-war was announced, and the friends hurried to the competition site. The tug-of-war was won by the 3-1 class, which Da-kyung was in. Classmates started praising the girl for being so strong. Jeong tried to shut up everyone below rank 3, but her friend gave her a slap on the head. Together, they went to watch the soccer competition. The teams that were in the finals were the teams that Jung-woon and Jae-hyun were on. Da-kyung was surprised that this was the case. Jeong shrugged. It had been like that since freshman year, and that was why those two were so popular. When Jae-hyun wiped off his sweat with his t-shirt and unintentionally exposed his torso, the girl sitting behind Da-kyung started yelling handsome with abs. It made Da-kyung's ears bleed. On the field, Jae-hyun took the ball away from Jung-woon and scored a goal. In the last match, the Class 3, 2-1. Da-kyung thought about the fact that they all looked like ordinary high school students, although in reality the personalities were very mysterious. Jeong next to her reached out. Jung-woon was surrounded by girls, but he eventually walked up to Da-kyung and unceremoniously took away her water bottle, saying that this water tasted better. Da-kyung irritatedly thought that any pure water tastes the same. Jeong noticed how hot it was getting outside and suggested they go get ice cream that the first years had made for all the participants. The first year behind the cash register explained to them that if they broke the record in the Pepero game, they would be entitled to take aishu for free for life. Aishu is a high-end ice cream, and Da-kyung was attracted to the possibility of taking premium ice cream for free for life. Jeong was already willing to just pay, but her friend wanted to try to set a record. Jeong, on the other hand, didn't want to participate and didn't understand why it was her and not Jung-woon, for example. Dae-kyung didn't want to participate with her boyfriend because he would probably enjoy it, and that was kind of uncomfortable. Jung suggested just paying and not making it up, because there was plenty of money anyway. However, halfway through the sentence, she stopped talking because it came to her. The girl, giggling slyly, quickly retreated before Da-kyung realized, and when the girl turned around to offer to just participate, the friend was already gone. Suspicion immediately fell on Jong-un, and Da-kyung bluntly asked where he had already taken her classmate. Jong-un assured her that he wasn't involved and offered to go with him. Da-kyung desperately didn't want to go with him because he was too secretive and had a lot of secrets behind him, and he didn't want to get involved with that young Sherlock Holmes. The other one, Jae-hyun, is also suspicious, but he's a little more relaxed. In the end, Da-kyung turned around and asked Jae-hyun if he wanted ice cream. Now they were in a competition. The conditions are that if the contestants' lips touch, or one of them touches a Pepero with their hand, or the wand breaks at all, they're out. Jae-hyun took a quick glance at the crowd and asked Da-kyung if she really wanted to set a record. Without giving it much thought, the girl confirmed, although she regretted it exactly 30 seconds later. Jae-hyun moved Da-kyung's chair very close to his own. On cue, they began. There were surprised whispers all around. There were rumors that Da-kyung was dating Jung-woon, who was now frowning. The wand kept shrinking. Dae-kyung realized that the competition was more taxing than she had expected. At the last moment, the girl tried to pull away and told Jae-hyun that she changed her mind, and now she could just participate and not set a record, but it was too late. The guy told her to freeze, moving dangerously close to Dae-kyung's face. She mentally squealed. Jeong dragged Dae-hoon behind her to watch Da-kyung having fun with Jong-woon at the Pepero competition. However, it was Jae-hyun who was sitting on the chair instead of Jong-woon. Jong-woon, being darker than a thundercloud, stood there watching them. The picture of Da Kyung almost kissing Jae-hyun immediately made Dae-hyun gag. He retreated to the wall to clear his stomach right on the lawn. The wand was measured. It was 9/10 of a meter long, which unfortunately was not a record. This angered Da Kyung a lot, and Jae-hyun remarked distantly that some people just didn't need to twitch. However, that didn't quell the righteous anger of the disappointed girl, and Jong-un tried to call out to her, but raindrops hit his outstretched hand. The people around him squealed in surprise and began to scatter, hiding their heads under their hoods. Dae-hoon, however, noticed that Jong-woon had a sudden change in his face after the rain started and left immediately. He told Da Kyung about it and related it to the story about the guy who poured a glass of water on Jong-un and then disappeared. Perhaps Jong-woon had some kind of phobia. But Da Kyung once put the guy in the bathtub one day. The girl decided to check it out and headed towards the building Jong-un was hiding in. Along the way, she pondered about the two of them. Dae Kyung didn't know the reasons why Jae-hyun was digging for Jong-un. Besides, the latter was in turn looking for Chairman Lee. Da Kyung found Jong-woon. She asked him why he didn't like the rain so much. The guy mentioned unpleasant memories that can't be buried deep in his soul so easily. He vaguely remarked that just like a person who was stabbed with a knife would tense up at the sight of any blade, a person who was in an accident in a thunderstorm would never drive in overcast weather. The former was apparently about Da Kyung, but the girl wasn't quite sure what he was getting at. In the end, Jong-un said he wasn't afraid of the rain, but of himself. Afraid of stumbling one day. Da Kyung chuckled, only allowing the thought that Jong-un was afraid of becoming a bad person, because now he was. The guy insisted that he was just Jong-un now. Da Kyung irritably turned away, calling him a fool who was still saying something to her about his smartness. However, perhaps he had a reason why he couldn't tell. Earlier in the morning, Dae-hoon had suggested that Jong-un might have been in a similar position to them. For example, in the National Intelligence Service. Another person with a not-so-secure plan to infiltrate the school. But in reality, Jong-un was useless. He always spoke incomprehensibly, but he couldn't be ignored either. Da Kyung pulled Jong-woon by his shirt and searched underneath, looking for a wire. The top was clear. The girl involuntarily lowered her gaze to her pants, but she wasn't smiling to fumble there as well. Seeing Da Kyung's confusion for a second, Jong-un advised her to check everywhere. She might be lucky enough to find a wiretap. Da Kyung's face became even more sour. It was like this guy was reading her mind. Luckily, Jae-hyun interrupted the awkward situation. Dae Kyung immediately pulled her hand away from Jung-won's body, and the guy remarked in a bored voice that Jae-hyun knew how to screw up. Jae-hyun didn't look remorseful and just advised him not to do something weird anywhere. He reminded Dae Kyung that they had a shootout gathering at 11:30. The girl wanted to go over to Jae-hyun, but Jung-woon caught her by the arm, asking her to stay by his side a little longer. But Da Kyung snatched her hand away and walked outside with Jae-hyun. Jong-un faded his gaze. Jae-hyun opened his umbrella over them and asked Da Kyung why she and Jong-woon weren't dating yet, since everything seemed to be mutual. The girl cited that she takes choosing a partner seriously. She also resented Jae-hyun's talkativeness. I should have told him everything. In the warehouse, shaking with tears, the girl pointed a gun at herself. Jae-hyun was writing a number on Da Kyung's back. The guy explained that the shootout was an individual competition, and if they won, the class was awarded 50 points on top. Da Kyung, hearing this, decided to take it easy and drop out quickly at the beginning. Suddenly, a girl named Im Si-young fell under her feet. She was quickly picked up by a guy who came over and led her away, apologizing. Da Kyung was surprised that the girl had 2 guns in her bag. Jae-hyun speculated that they probably made an exception for sports shooters. Dae Kyung inferred that in competition, experienced shooters had an advantage, but in reality, shots could be dodged. This made the gunfight simple dodgeball with pistols only. Da Kyung scolded Jae Hyun for putting so much stress on the younger ones in training. Say, Young looked a little too scared after all. The guy didn't understand why he was stressing her out right away. The competitors finally entered the gym. What was happening was filmed and broadcasted through the drones. The points were counted in the same way. Jeong looked around excitedly, trying to find Jung-woon or Da-hoon, but neither of them were anywhere. Da Kyung was approached from behind by someone, and she turned around, aiming her gun at the comer. It was Jae Hyun, who had decided to take advantage of the girl's offer to work as a team. While Da Kyung reprimanded him for sneaking up from behind, Jae Hyun shot the contestant standing behind him. Da Kyung appreciated the guy's marksmanship and decided to compete with him, setting a condition. Every point of difference equaled a flick. The hunt began. Da Kyung climbed up on the partition and shot at point blank range. Jae Hyun noticed how the girl was fired up about the competition, even though she hadn't been interested in participating earlier. Da Kyung replied that she liked to win. Abruptly, the list of contestants began to dwindle, as if someone had started a massacre. Da Kyung was shot from behind, and she jumped down unsuccessfully to escape the ball right into Jae Hyun's hands. The guy froze, and the girl, as if nothing had happened, asked her to put her down on the floor and looked for where the shots came from. Jae Hyun had mixed feelings about Da Kyung's behavior. Did she really not realize that it was all about her rash actions and how they affected them? Jae Hyun concluded that Da Kyung wasn't paying attention at all, and he was basically right. On the broadcast, the commentator noticed that they seemed to have a romantic movie being filmed in their gym right during the competition. Jeong was pleased with this interaction between Da Kyung and Jae Hyun. However, a sullen Jung-woon sat down next to her. He began to brood aloofly about his failure. "Something bad always happens in the rain," the guy muttered. Looking at the screen, he thought that the heavens were angry with him. Jung-woon asked Jeong for the contacts of an expensive and quality shaman. The girl laughed awkwardly, hoping Jong-un didn't mean it. That's when the broadcast cut off. More precisely, the entire gym lost connection. Meanwhile, there were only 3 people left in the competition. Da Kyung raised her head and noticed the sparkling drone that began to gradually fall down. It looked like they had no broadcasting or scoring, so they had also given up their phones. The only thing left to do was to wait. Behind Da Kyung Jae Hyun's back, he noticed the figure of one of the contestants preparing to take a shot. The guy jerked Da Kyung sharply on top of him, covering her from the projectile. However, instead of a harmless snap and a rubber ball, a real shot rang out, and a real bullet stained Jae Hyun's shirt with blood. The guy clutched the gunshot wound with the palm of his hand and slumped forward, right on top of Da Kyung. Si-young stood behind him, sobbing in fear, holding a real gun disguised as a sports pistol. Si-young, who had injured Jae Hyun, was shaking and crying. Da Kyung fired her gun at her, hitting her in the forehead. It was enough to let the girl out of her sight. In front of Si-young, there was now only Jae Hyun slumped against a crate. Da Kyung swooped in from behind, causing Si-young to duck her nose into the floor. The girl begged for mercy, begging to be let go. Da Kyung took the gun away and put it to Si-young's temple. She doubted that the attack was a personal initiative, so she demanded the name of the person who gave the order. When she remained silent, Da Kyung's next question was how she got the gun in the first place. Si-young sobbed and said she wasn't allowed to say anything. Da Kyung moved closer and hissed that Won Joan was running away from her in tears for a reason, but because she killed 5 people in front of him, and the girl would gladly finish off Si-young as well if she didn't start talking. She trembled, biting her lip. But in the end, she said she'd rather be killed. She begged to be killed so that it would finally be over. That made Da Kyung fall into a memory. Memories of how their Hyun Ajushi had interrupted his own comrades and was about to kill Daehan, apologizing incessantly for it. Da Kyung had come just in time then. trying to reason with the man who used to take care of them all, but was now clutching Dae-hoon's throat. The girl had to wound him and then kill him when he started begging for death. For Se-young had his family as hostages. In a grim, icy voice, she called out the name of the construction company's CEO, Shin Myung-hwan. However, the intimidated Se-young only cried, neither confirming nor denying the hunch. The medics burst into the gymnasium. Da-kyung threw a gun at the nearest one and headed away despite being yelled at and asked to stop. After the incident, the school was closed for 3 weeks. Even though there was an armed attack in a place like this, there was no fuss, even considering that a Chaebol child was hurt. Dae-hoon couldn't understand how anyone could dare to do such a crazy thing. Apparently, Se-young had been exposed by Da-kyung. Of course, the girl did a lot of things, but in the end, the significant mistake was the incident with Won-jun. Da-kyung also wondered why she was never asked about anything after that. Dae-hoon remembered that Jung-woon had promised to take care of everything back then, and apparently he had. Da-kyung pounced on the hacker, accusing him of not telling this important clue sooner. After all, then someone powerful is behind Jung-woon. He could be the son of the chairman, and then it makes sense that Se-young is aware of Dae-kyung's presence at the school. Except, Dae-hoon saw a significant hole in that logic. If Jong-un wanted to kill Da-kyung, he could have used a better opportunity, of which he had plenty. Even yesterday, the girl was sitting alone with him. Da-kyung exhaled tiredly, not understanding where Jong-un got so much power from. An old hunch was replaced by the thought that Won-jun might have let it slip. Dae-hoon reminded her of Jae-kyun too, but she wasn't sure he could know such details about her, but she shouldn't trust him either. Dae-hoon noticed that everything that had happened was very different from Se-young's usual methods. For example, on the first day of school, when they had been broken into, some intruder had just been rummaging through the computer, hoping to find something. If he had been sure of the identities of the tenants, he wouldn't have left them alive. But instead of killing them, he searched for information, and Dae-kyung was there in time. But when he looked at Dae-kyung's uniform, he realized that since the chairman's son was studying with the girl who had come to rescue Dae-hoon, it was obvious that Lee Dae-kyung was not an ordinary student. That person could be related to the chairman. Da-kyung was quiet and said that she had memorized Shin Myung-hwan's number. They called that number. The man took the call, but there was only silence on the other end. Shin Myung-hwan quickly guessed that it was Lee Dae-kyung who had called. Da-kyung asked who the man was. The manager mirrored the question. When he replied that he knew something about her himself, he suggested that the girl seemed to be the pawn who had been chasing after Soon everywhere. Da-kyung jumped up from her chair, clattering her hand on the table. She asked how he knew her boss's name. The manager coolly remarked that he thought everyone from their faction had long since died out. Of those that had managed to confirm, there were only 3 left, and the man mockingly asked Da-kyung for a lead on someone else. Dae-hoon and Da-kyung looked at each other in amazement. 3. The manager, however, continued on about how he had thought for a long time about why one of his old buddies had ended up at this school. He thought long and hard about the reason and assumed that since he couldn't take revenge personally, the girl had decided to target a relative of the chairman, although the manager wasn't sure how Da-kyung had gotten the information. There were shouts, pleas for mercy, and mooing in the background, but the loudest was the heartbreaking daddy. That broke out from Se-young. While the superintendent wondered how Da-kyung had even managed to get into this school, the girl wrote on paper to Dae-hoon asking him to trace the location where the call was coming from. The hacker tapped on the keys. At the point when the superintendent was about to voice his suggestion, the connection dropped. This was necessary so that they themselves wouldn't be detected. Da-kyung snatched the location and stepped back a couple steps. Dae-hoon was finding the decision to go there the worst possible decision. And those words about the 3 remaining, could the manager have just been bluffing? Da-kyung slumped in her chair. she reminded herself about Uncle Chul. Dae-hoon pressed his lips together and repeated his words from the past. What happened wasn't Da-kyung's fault. It was just an accident, and if Hyun hadn't stopped the girl, he would have killed the hacker. But in front of Da-kyung's eyes was still the face of the dying man, crying, apologizing, and asking to be killed. It only made it more certain that it was necessary to go there. Dae-hoon, stumbling, rushed towards her, hoping to reason with her, convince her not to risk her life for a girl Da-kyung didn't even know. He tried to remind her why they were looking for the Cherim's son instead of him. But Da-kyung was adamant. Because of her, the outsiders MC Young and Lee Jae Hyun were involved. Dae-hoon covered his face with his palms, sighing heavily. He promptly put the books on Da-kyung and taped them up with duct tape. It certainly wasn't body armor, but at least it could save him from a knife. Even if everything worked out, the manager wasn't someone who would just back down. Dae-hoon had asked Da-kyung not to kill anyone there. They had bitter experiences in the past and had seriously paid the price for messing with Se-young. Dae-hoon didn't want to lose Da-kyung as well. The perimeter was guarded. One of the men radioed to check Building A for possible infiltration, but no one answered him. He reached for his gun and peeked out from around the corner. A Dae-kyung figure appeared from behind, quickly knocking the man out. In the main building, one of the bandits advised him to stop and leave, as they would be in trouble if the bitch who was supposed to be behind bars showed up. But before he could even make a sound, he was knocked out by Da-kyung. She took out all the guards, breaking some of their limbs in the process. And then she turned to the crying Se-young and asked her to show her where they were holding her father.